When the mafia boss who walked away from you calls at 2 a.m., you don't answer. When your water breaks and armed men are outside your door, you have no choice. Sloane Hart thought divorcing Damon Valenti meant freedom. 8 months pregnant with his child, she kept the secret buried. But tonight, someone wants her dead. And the only man ruthless enough to save her is the one she swore she'd never need again. Stay until the end to see if love can survive when your past pulls a gun. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. Asant. The phone vibrated against the nightstand at 2:11 a.m. The screen lighting up with the name Damon Valenti had spent 8 months trying to forget. Sloane. He stared at it, shirtless in the dark of his penthouse bedroom, the city glittering 40 floors below like scattered diamonds on black velvet. His hand hovered over the device. Every instinct he'd honed over 15 years in this life told him to let it ring out, to let the past stay buried where he'd left it, signed, sealed, and delivered by lawyers who charged more per hour than most people made in a week. But Sloane didn't call. Not when she'd moved out. Not when she'd returned his grandmother's ring by courier. Not even when he'd had Mara track her new address just to make sure she was safe, though he'd never admit that particular weakness aloud. The phone kept buzzing. Damon's jaw tightened. He reached for it with the same controlled precision he used for everything, counting to 3, exhaling slowly, then swiping to answer without a word. Damon. Her voice came through ragged, breathless, wrapped in a pain that made his entire body go rigid. I need you to listen and not hang up. I'm listening. His tone gave away nothing, though his free hand had already curled into a fist against the silk sheets. I'm in labor. The words tumbled out in a rush. The baby is yours. I know I should have told you. I know there's someone outside my door. They're not knocking. They're just waiting. The world sharpened into crystal clarity. Damon was already moving, phone wedged between shoulder and ear, as he grabbed the jeans he'd discarded hours ago. What floor? 3rd, apartment 3F. Damon, I can hear them breathing through the gap under the... Her voice cracked into a gasp that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the contraction clearly ripping through her. Lock yourself in the bathroom. Towels under the door. Don't make a sound. He was pulling on a black shirt, stepping into boots, his mind already 3 steps ahead. I'm 10 minutes out, maybe 8. They'll hear the sirens if I call. You're not calling anyone but me. He crossed to the wall safe, hidden behind a modernist painting his ex-wife had called pretentious during one of their final fights. The irony wasn't lost on him. The safe opened with a fingerprint and a 6-digit code. Inside, 3 passports, $200,000 in cash, and the Glock 19 he'd hoped he'd never need again. Sloane, bathroom, now. Okay. He could hear her moving, the soft shuffle of feet on hardwood, the careful turn of a lock. Okay, I'm in. Water still intact? Broke 20 minutes ago. Another gasp, longer this time. She was trying to breathe through it the way those ridiculous prenatal classes probably taught. Contractions are 4 minutes apart. 4 minutes. Christ. He grabbed the gun, checked the magazine by muscle memory, and headed for the private elevator that would take him directly to the parking garage. You've been timing them? Since midnight. I thought it was Braxton Hicks until... Damon, what if they come in before you get here? Then you stay silent and you stay hidden. He stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for P3 where his vehicles waited. The descent was smooth, controlled, completely at odds with the ice-cold fury crystallizing in his chest. But they won't. Because I'm going to be there in 7 minutes, and anyone stupid enough to still be in that hallway is going to regret every choice that led them to your door. He heard her exhale, shaky but steadier. You sound different. I am different. The elevator opened onto concrete and shadows, motion sensors triggering soft lights that illuminated 3 vehicles, the Aston Martin he drove for show, the Tesla for errands, and the armored Range Rover he kept for nights like this. He headed straight for the Range Rover, but not different enough to let someone threaten what's mine. I'm not yours anymore. The words came out automatic, rehearsed, like she'd been telling herself that for months. Damon pulled open the driver's door, tossed the gun onto the passenger seat, and fired up the engine with a roar that echoed off the garage walls. We can debate that later. Right now, I need you to tell me everything. When did this start? The stalking or the labor? His hands tightened on the wheel. There's been stalking? I didn't want to believe it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. 3 weeks ago, my building's keycard portal started glitching, resetting at random times, letting people in without codes. I reported it twice. Nothing changed. He reversed out of the space with controlled speed, heading for the exit ramp. What else? Packages. Small ones. No return address. Things I'd mentioned wanting months ago. A specific brand of tea. A book I'd looked at once in a store. She paused, breathing through another contraction. When she spoke again, her voice was thinner. Then the super started acting weird. Wouldn't make eye contact. Kept asking if I was expecting visitors. Damon's jaw could have cracked concrete. He'd walked away 8 months ago because Sloane had demanded it. Demanded a life that didn't include looking over her shoulder, didn't include wondering if every stranger on the street was a threat. He'd signed the papers because he'd loved her enough to let her go. And someone had seen that separation as an opportunity. The super's name? Marcus Webb. Damon, you can't just... I'm not going to do anything except have a conversation. He blew through a red light at the intersection of 5th and Broadway. The streets empty enough at this hour that the risk was calculated. But if he's been compromised, I need to know. Compromised. She laughed, but it came out broken. God, I forgot how you talk. Like we're in some kind of spy thriller instead of, oh God. The sound she made then wasn't a gasp. It was a guttural, primal noise that spoke of pain beyond words. Breathe, Sloane. In through your nose, out through your mouth. He was doing 70 in a 45 zone now, the Range Rover eating up distance with mechanical efficiency. How far apart now? 3 minutes? Maybe less. Her breathing was ragged. Damon, I didn't know who else to call. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for staying alive. He took a corner hard enough that the tires screamed. And don't apologize for the baby. We'll handle it. Handle it. Another pained laugh. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. He could see her building now, a converted warehouse in the arts district that she'd chosen specifically because it was 15 miles from his world. You're having my child. Someone's threatening you. I eliminate the threat and make sure you both survive. Everything else is just noise. Silence on her end, except for the controlled breathing of someone working through agony. Sloane? I'm here. Softer now. I forgot how good you are at making things sound possible. He pulled up half a block from her building, killing the headlights and scanning the street. 2 cars that didn't belong, a Honda Civic with dealership plates and a panel van with no company markings. Both had sight lines to her entrance. Did you forget other things too? Like what? Like how I don't lose. He pulled out his phone, keeping Sloane on the line while he opened a second app and placed a call. It rang twice. This better be life or death. Mara Valenti's voice came through sharp and alert despite the hour. His sister didn't sleep much either. Sloane's in labor. She's got hostiles outside her apartment. I need you at 1847 North Spencer, 3rd floor, with a cleanup crew and transport to Calder's clinic. No hesitation, no questions about why his ex-wife was having his baby, or why he hadn't mentioned it in 8 months. Just 15 minutes. You going in alone? I'll be done in 10. Damon, she's at 3-minute intervals, Mara. I don't have time for caution. He ended the call and switched back to Sloane. Still with me? Unfortunately. But there was something almost like warmth in her voice now, buried under the pain. What are you going to do? Something stupid and effective. He checked the Glock's chamber one more time, then tucked it into the holster at the small of his back. When you hear noise in the hallway, you stay exactly where you are until I come to the bathroom door and say your full name. Not a nickname, not it's me. Your full legal name. Sloane Elizabeth Hart, she paused. Or is it still Valenti? We'll figure that out later, too. He opened the driver's door, stepping out into the cool pre-dawn air. Right now, I need you to trust me one more time. Damon, I know you stopped. I know I gave you 1,000 reasons to stop, but for the next 10 minutes, trust me anyway. He heard her breath catch, and for a moment he thought it was another contraction. Then, okay. Good girl. He ended the call and started walking. The street was quiet in that suspended way cities get at the darkest hours. Not quite asleep, not quite awake, just holding its breath. Damon moved with the economy of motion that came from years of practice, staying in the shadows, cataloging every detail. The Civic's driver was checking his phone. The van's side mirror showed at least 2 occupants, both facing the building's entrance. Amateur hour. These weren't his world's professionals. They were hired muscle, probably local, definitely expendable, which meant someone else was calling the shots. He approached from the Civic's blind spot, moving with the kind of silence that most people didn't know was possible. The driver never looked up from his phone until Damon tapped on the window with the Glock's suppressor. The man's eyes went wide. Damon smiled, the smile that had made stronger men reconsider their life choices. "Window down! Slow!" The driver complied, hands shaking. He was maybe 25, with the kind of gym rat build that looked impressive until someone who actually knew violence showed up. "Who sent you?" "Man, I don't know what you're—" Damon pressed the suppressor against the man's temple. "Second chance. 1 sentence. Who sent you, and what are your orders?" Just to watch the building. Report if anyone comes or goes from 3F. That's it. I swear to God that's all they told us to do." "They?" "I got the job through a guy named Vince Leone. He said it was surveillance, nothing heavy, 500 for the night." Vince. Something cold and venomous uncoiled in Damon's chest. Vince Leone was his fixer, had been for 3 years. The man who handled the jobs too delicate for the usual channels, who'd never given Damon a reason to doubt his loyalty. Until now. "How long have you been here?" "Since midnight. There's a 2-man team upstairs doing the same thing, just closer to the door." Damon's finger tightened fractionally on the trigger. "Doing the same thing, or waiting to do something else?" "I don't know, man. I just drive. I just watch. I don't ask questions." "Start asking them. It might save your life." Damon stepped back, lowering the gun. "Keys on the dash, phone too. Then you walk away and you never take another job from Vince Leone. Understand?" The man nodded so hard it looked painful. He fumbled the keys and phone onto the dashboard, then practically fell out of the car in his rush to escape. Damon watched him sprint down the street until he disappeared around a corner. Then he turned his attention to the van. This required a different approach. 2 men meant coordination, meant at least one of them watching the mirrors while the other kept eyes on the building. Damon circled wide, using parked cars for cover, until he was at the van's rear corner. The back doors weren't locked. Another amateur mistake. He eased one open just enough to slip inside. The interior smelled like old coffee and cheaper cologne. 2 men sat in the front seats exactly as he'd predicted. The passenger was the talker. "Says we're just supposed to report, but what if she goes into labor or something? We just gonna watch?" "We do what Vince pays us to do." The driver's voice was older, harder. "She goes into labor, we report it. Someone else handles extraction." Extraction. Damon moved forward with the gun leading. "Someone already is handling it." Both men went rigid. The passenger started to turn, hand reaching for something in his jacket. Damon shot him in the shoulder. A controlled burst through the suppressor that sounded like a sharp cough in the confined space. The man screamed and clutched the wound. "Next one's between your eyes." Damon trained the gun on the driver. "Hands on the steering wheel, where I can see them." The driver complied, his face gone white. "Jesus Christ, man." "Wrong prayer. You're going to tell me everything Vince Leone told you about tonight, and you're going to do it in the next 30 seconds, or your friend bleeds out while you watch." The passenger was whimpering, blood seeping between his fingers. The driver swallowed hard. He said there was a woman in 3F high value, needed to know when she was vulnerable, said there might be interest from other parties. "What parties?" "He didn't say. Just that we were supposed to report her movements, who came and went, especially if she looked like she was in distress or going to the hospital." The driver's voice cracked. "Said someone would pay top dollar for real-time intel on her location." Damon felt that cold rage crystallize into something sharp and focused. "Your phones, both of them, on the dashboard. Now." The driver obeyed immediately. The passenger fumbled his out with his good hand, gasping. Damon collected both devices, then stepped back toward the rear doors. "You've got 2 choices. Option 1. You drive your bleeding friend to the nearest ER and you tell them it was a robbery gone wrong. You never mention this address. You never mention Vince Leone, and you forget you ever saw my face. And option 2? The driver asked weakly. Damon's smile was all teeth. You don't want option 2. He dropped out of the van and slammed the doors. The engine started within seconds, the vehicle pulling away with enough speed to suggest the driver had made the smart choice. Damon checked his watch. 6 minutes since he'd left the Range Rover. Sloane's contractions would be closer now, maybe 2.5 minutes apart. He needed to move. The building's entrance yielded to a key card he'd had made months ago, another thing Sloane didn't know about, another precaution she would have hated him for taking. The lobby was empty, the elevator quiet. He took the stairs instead, moving quickly but silently up 3 flights. The third-floor hallway was exactly as Sloane had described, too quiet, with that particular quality of silence that meant someone was holding their breath. 2 men stood outside apartment 3F. They had the look of professionals, not the hired amateurs from the street, but actual operators. One was checking his watch. The other had his ear against Sloane's door. Damon didn't announce himself. He simply raised the Glock and put a round into the doorframe 6 inches from the first man's head. Both men spun, hands reaching for weapons. Damon had already closed half the distance. Federal Building Security! His voice cracked like a whip. Hands where I can see them, now! The bluff worked for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for confusion to slow their draw. Then training kicked in and both men were pulling guns. Damon shot the closest one in the knee. The man went down screaming. The second managed to get his weapon up, but Damon was already inside his range, redirecting the gun toward the ceiling with one hand while driving the Glock's suppressor into the man's solar plexus with the other. The man folded. Damon stripped his weapon, then drove an elbow into his temple. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The one with the shattered knee was trying to crawl toward his fallen gun. Damon stepped on his wrist, grinding until fingers opened and released. Then he crouched down, gun pressed under the man's chin. Who hired you? Go to hell! Damon increased pressure on the wrist. Bones ground together. The man's scream turned into a sob. I can make this last hours, or you can give me a name and I'll let the paramedics find you alive. No name! The words came out in a rush. Just a phone number and GPS coordinates for this address? Cash drop in a gym locker, instructions to maintain surveillance on the woman in 3F, report if she tried to leave or if anyone approached. The number? The man rattled off 10 digits. Damon committed them to memory, then stood and drove his boot into the man's temple. The screaming stopped. He collected both their phones, added them to his growing collection, then approached Sloane's door. He knocked 3 times, soft and controlled. Sloane Elizabeth Hart, it's done. You can open the bathroom door. For a long moment, nothing. Then he heard the lock turn, the door creak open. Sloane's voice came through shaky. Damon? Come out to the front door. We need to leave now. He heard her moving, slower than he would have liked. Every second they stayed was another second for complications to arrive. He holstered the Glock and started dragging the unconscious men toward the stairwell, not to be kind, but to clear the evidence from Sloane's doorway. The apartment door opened. Sloane stood there, one hand braced against the frame, the other pressed to her enormous belly. She was wearing an oversized sweater and leggings, her dark hair pulled into a messy knot, her face pale with pain and fear, and something else he couldn't quite name. For 8 months, he'd tried to forget what she looked like. Now seeing her pregnant with his child, he realized he hadn't forgotten a single detail. He'd just been lying to himself about how much it mattered. You're bleeding. She was staring at his hands. It's not mine. He closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching. Can you walk? I can try. Another contraction hit. He watched her breathe through it, counting silently, 90 seconds of controlled agony before she could straighten again. That was 2 minutes since the last one. Then we're out of time. He made a decision, reaching for her. I'm going to pick you up. It'll be faster. Damon, I don't care. He lifted her with the ease of someone who'd spent years maintaining the kind of strength that didn't just look good in a suit. She weighed more than she had 8 months ago, but not enough to matter. Arms around my neck. She obeyed, and he could feel her shaking, adrenaline, pain, and exhaustion all hitting at once. There were gunshots. Controlled situation. He started toward the stairs, moving carefully now, every step calculated to minimize jarring. Mara's meeting us with transport. We're taking you to Calder's clinic. Reese Calder? The doctor who patches up people who can't go to regular hospitals? The same. He navigated the first flight of stairs, Sloane's breath warm against his neck. He delivered half the babies in my father's generation. He can handle this. And the men outside my door? They'll wake up with questions they won't want to answer. They reached the ground floor. Through the glass entrance, Damon could see headlights approaching, a black SUV that had Mara written all over it. Right on time. Damon? Sloane's voice was so quiet he almost missed it over the sound of the SUV's engine. Thank you for coming. He pushed through the entrance as Mara brought the SUV to a stop directly in front of them. Thank me when we're both still alive. The rear door opened. Mara was behind the wheel, her sharp features set in that expression of controlled efficiency that she wore like armor. In the back seat was a setup that looked like a mobile medical bay. Clean sheets, monitors, emergency supplies. Get her in. Mara's eyes flicked to the blood on Damon's hands. How bad? 4 unconscious, 2 scared straight, 0 fatalities. He maneuvered Sloane into the back seat as gently as he could, given the circumstances. But someone's been tracking her for weeks, and Vince Leone's name came up. Mara's expression went from controlled to frozen. Our Vince Leone? We'll verify later. Damon slid in next to Sloane, already reaching for the medical supplies. Right now, we move. Mara didn't need to be told twice. The SUV was accelerating before Damon had even closed the door. Sloane grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in with another contraction. Where's the hospital? No hospitals. Damon found a blood pressure cuff, started wrapping it around her arm. Hospitals mean records. Records mean anyone looking for you knows exactly where to find you. So you're taking me to some underground clinic where, oh God. The contraction peaked. Damon watched the monitor he'd clipped to her finger, tracking her vitals with the same focus he brought to everything. Her oxygen was good. Blood pressure elevated but not dangerous, heart rate fast but steady. The clinic is clean, professional, and completely off books. He met her eyes, willing her to hear what he wasn't saying. Sloane, someone's been watching you for weeks. They knew your routines, your preferences, your vulnerabilities. They had men outside your door tonight. We can't risk a hospital until I know who's behind this and why. She stared at him, pain and fear and understanding warring across her face. Then slowly, she nodded. How far? 20 minutes. He glanced at Mara. Can we make it 15? Watch me. Mara cut across 2 lanes of empty highway, the SUV's engine growling. Sloane, I need you to know that Calder's delivered 12 babies in the last year alone. He's got full surgical capability if needed, monitoring equipment, the works. This isn't some back alley butcher shop. It's also not staffed by people who'll ask why a Mafia boss is bringing his ex-wife in for an emergency delivery. Sloane's voice was dry despite the pain. I haven't forgotten how this world works. Damon felt something twist in his chest. You shouldn't have had to remember. Yeah, well, another contraction. She wrote it out with gritted teeth, her hand crushing his. Some things you can't forget, no matter how hard you try. Mara's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. We've got company. Damon turned. 2 cars had appeared behind them, a dark sedan and a motorcycle, both matching their speed exactly. How long? Since the highway entrance. Mara's hands tightened on the wheel. Could be coincidence. You believe that? Not even a little bit. Damon pulled the Glock, checked the magazine. When they make their move, you focus on driving. I'll handle the rest. Damon, no! Sloane started, but another contraction cut her off. This one was stronger, longer. He could see the pain written across every line of her face. 90 seconds apart now. He touched her cheek, forcing her to look at him. I need you to focus on breathing and staying calm. Can you do that? While people shoot at us? Sure, no problem. The sedan accelerated, pulling up alongside them. Damon saw the passenger window starting to roll down. Mara. I see it. She cut right, forcing the sedan to overshoot, but the motorcycle was already coming up on the other side, the rider's hand reaching into a jacket. Damon didn't hesitate. He lowered his window and put 3 rounds into the motorcycle's front tire. The bike wobbled, then went down in a screech of metal and sparks. The rider rolled away, survived, no longer a threat. The sedan was coming back, angry now. It tried to box them in, but Mara knew every defensive driving trick ever invented. She braked hard, let the sedan overshoot again, then accelerated around it. "Exit coming up." Mara's voice was perfectly calm. "If we can make it there, I know back roads they won't anticipate." "Do it!" The SUV screamed across 3 lanes, taking the exit at a speed that had Sloane gasping and clutching the oh-shit handle. Damon braced her with one arm while keeping the gun trained out the window with the other. The sedan tried to follow. Mara waited until they were in the turn, then slammed the brakes. The sedan couldn't compensate. It overshot the exit, horns blaring as it tried to force its way back. "Lost them," Mara confirmed, already accelerating down the surface street. "But they'll regroup. How much time do we have?" Damon looked at Sloane. Her face was drawn, her breathing shallow and quick. "Sloane, talk to me." 90 seconds, maybe less. She pressed her hand to her belly, and he could see the contraction rippling across her abdomen like a wave. "Damon, if we don't make it, we'll make it." He said it with absolute certainty because the alternative wasn't something he'd allow into existence. "Mara, how far now?" 10 minutes if traffic stays clear." "Make it 7. The SUV surged forward. Damon held Sloane through another contraction, then another, counting the seconds between and doing the math he didn't want to do. They were close. Too close. "There's something you should know," Sloane said between contractions, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me later." "No, now." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "I didn't just keep the baby a secret. I've been documenting everything, the stalking, the weird behavior, all of it. Photos, recordings, dates and times. It's all in a cloud drive that only I can access." Damon stared at her. "Why?" "Because I knew." Her eyes were fierce despite the pain. "I knew that if something happened, if someone came after me, I'd need proof. I'd need evidence that this wasn't paranoia or pregnancy hormones. I'd need leverage." Pride and pain hit him in equal measure. She'd been alone, pregnant, terrified, and she'd been smart enough to protect herself the only way she could. "Where's the login?" "Memorized. I'll give it to you once we're safe." "You'll give it to me now in case you can't later." She opened her mouth to argue, then another contraction hit, the strongest one yet. When it passed, she was crying. "I'm scared." "I know." He pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling her head while the other kept the gun ready. "But you're not alone anymore." Mara took another turn, and suddenly they were in an industrial area that Damon recognized. The kind of neighborhood where businesses ask no questions and warehouses change purpose every few months. She pulled up to what looked like an abandoned medical supply depot, complete with faded signage and boarded windows. "This is it? Calder's been here 6 months. Front entrance is a decoy." Mara parked and was out of the driver's seat before the engine stopped. She opened the rear door, already reaching for Sloane. "Can you walk?" "I can. Oh God." This contraction was different. Damon saw Sloane's entire body go rigid, saw the involuntary bearing down reflex she couldn't control. He knew that look. He'd seen it once before, when his sister had delivered her first child. "We're out of time." He scooped Sloane up again, following Mara toward what looked like a service entrance. "She's in transition." Mara pulled open the door, revealing a pristine white hallway that would have been at home in any high-end medical facility. A man in surgical scrubs appeared, Dr. Reese Calder, looking exactly as Damon remembered, 60-something, gray-haired, with the steady hands of someone who'd seen every complication medicine could throw at him. "Damon Valenti." Calder's voice was dry. "When Mara said you were bringing someone in, I should have known it would be complicated. Labor, multiple threats, contractions under 60 seconds. Damon carried Sloane through the door, past examination rooms, and into what looked like a fully equipped birthing suite. "How fast can you assess?" "Put her on the bed and give me 2 minutes." Calder was already washing his hands, his movements efficient and practiced. "Mara, I need you to scrub in. You..." He pointed at Damon. Are going to stand right there and not pass out. Damon laid Sloane on the bed as carefully as he could. She immediately curled onto her side, groaning. Something's wrong. This feels wrong. Let me check. Calder moved in with the calm confidence of someone who'd delivered babies in worse conditions. Sloane, I'm Dr. Calder. I'm going to examine you now. Is that all right? She nodded, too far gone in the contraction to speak. Damon watched Calder work, watched Mara move into position with the ease of someone who'd done this before. He felt useless, which was an unfamiliar and unwelcome sensation. 8 centimeters, Calder announced. Baby's in a good position. Everything looks normal for someone in active labor. Then why does it feel wrong? Sloane gasped. Because it's your first baby, and labor feels like the world is ending. Calder's tone was matter-of-fact. You're doing fine. Your body knows what it's doing even if your brain doesn't trust it yet. Another contraction hit. Sloane grabbed Damon's hand hard enough to bruise. He let her, keeping his own face neutral even as his mind raced through everything that could still go wrong. They were in a secure location. The immediate threats were neutralized. Sloane was in capable hands, but someone had been tracking her for weeks. Someone had hired professional surveillance, and Vince Leone's name had come up. Mara. He kept his voice low. I need you to make some calls. Now? She was helping Sloane into a better position. Yes, now, I need to know where Vince Leone has been for the last month, who he's been talking to, where his money's been going, everything. Mara's eyes narrowed. You think he's behind this? I think his name came up twice tonight in connection with people watching my ex-wife. I think that's not a coincidence. Damon looked at Sloane, who was breathing through another contraction with her eyes squeezed shut. And I think we're about to be very busy, so I need answers before things get worse. On it. Mara stepped away, pulling out her phone. Calder adjusted the monitors, his expression thoughtful. Damon, you want to tell me why someone's trying to get to a woman in labor? No. Fair enough. Calder checked the fetal heart rate, nodded in satisfaction. But you should know that my clinic has one entrance and excellent security. Once those doors lock, nobody gets in without my permission. Can you lock them now? Already done. Automatic protocol when someone arrives in active labor. Calder met his eyes. Your baby's going to be born in a secure location with excellent medical care. The rest is your problem to solve. Damon felt some of the tension ease. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If this goes sideways, you're the one explaining to her why her delivery involved multiple armed guards. Sloane let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He won't have to explain, I already know. She looked at Damon, her eyes fever bright. This is what I left to avoid. I know. And now it's found me anyway. I know that too. He moved closer, keeping his voice low enough that only she could hear. But the difference is that this time, I'm not walking away. Not until you and our daughter are safe. Daughter? She blinked. How do you... Educated guess based on heart rate patterns. Calder smiled slightly. Though I've been wrong before. But Damon knew he wasn't wrong. He could feel it in his bones. The same way he could feel danger before it arrived. They were having a daughter. A little girl who would have Sloane's eyes and his stubbornness and every reason to resent the world she was being born into. Unless he changed that world first. Mara, he raised his voice. What do you have? She walked back in, her expression grim. Vince's phone has been to this address 3 times in the last 2 weeks. He's also made cash withdrawals totaling $50,000 in the last month, all from different ATMs. And his call log shows multiple connections to a burner phone that pinged off towers near Sloane's apartment. The cold fury that had been simmering in Damon's chest crystallized into something sharp and absolute. Where is he now? According to his last GPS ping, about 15 minutes from here. Mara hesitated. Damon, if he's compromised, then we find out why and we handle it. He looked at Sloane. I need to step out for 5 minutes. Like hell? She started, but Calder interrupted. Actually, I need you out anyway. She's at 9 centimeters. Things are about to get intense, and you're going to be more helpful making sure nobody interrupts us than you are in here asking questions I don't have time to answer. Damon wanted to argue, but Calder was right, and more importantly, Sloane needed him to handle the external threats more than she needed him to watch her suffer. He leaned down, pressed a kiss to her sweat-dampened forehead. "I'll be right outside. You need me, you scream." "That's probably going to happen anyway," Sloane muttered. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he was moving, Mara following, both of them stepping into the hallway and closing the door behind them. "Talk to me," Damon said quietly. "How bad is this?" "Bad enough that I've got 6 men on their way here for perimeter security." Mara's jaw was tight. "Vince has been your fixer for 3 years. If he's turned, we don't know who else might be compromised. Then we assume everyone's compromised until proven otherwise." Damon pulled out his phone, started typing. "I need you to reach out to every contact we trust, and I mean truly trust, people who owe us life debts, and get them ready to move. If this is bigger than Vince, we're going to need allies." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to find out why my fixer thinks he can threaten what's mine and live to tell about it." From inside the birthing suite, he heard Sloane cry out, a sound of pure, primal effort. Mara touched his arm. "She's strong. She'll get through this." "I know," but his hand had tightened on the phone hard enough to make the case creak. "The question is whether I'll let anyone who threatened her get through the next hour." His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. We can make this easy, or we can make this painful." Damon showed it to Mara. Her expression went flat and dangerous. "They're here." "Good." He checked the Glocks magazine one more time. "Let them come." Because Damon Valenti had spent 8 months trying to be the man Sloane wanted, the one who walked away from violence, who chose peace over power, who let her go because she asked. But tonight, with his daughter about to be born and someone threatening both of them, he remembered who he really was. And that man didn't negotiate. He eliminated problems. The perimeter alarm chimed soft and polite, like someone ringing a doorbell instead of announcing an invasion. Mara's phone lit up with camera feeds showing 3 vehicles approaching from different angles, coordinated, professional, exactly what Damon had expected. "They're not even trying to hide it." Mara pulled up the security interface, her fingers flying across the screen. 2 SUVs and a sedan. 8 men visible, probably more we can't see. Damon moved to the window, staying back far enough that he wouldn't silhouette against the light. The vehicles were parking in a loose semicircle around the building's front entrance, their occupants making no effort at stealth. "They want us to know they're here. It's a power play." "Or they think we're trapped." Mara's voice was cold. "Standard siege tactics. Block the exits, apply pressure, wait for surrender." "They're going to be disappointed." He checked his watch. Sloane had been in the birthing suite for 12 minutes. Calder had said she was at 9 centimeters. That meant maybe 30 minutes until full dilation, maybe an hour until delivery. They needed to hold that long. "Where's our backup?" 4 minutes out, but Damon... Mara turned the phone so he could see the screen. One of the camera feeds showed a familiar face stepping out of the lead SUV. Vince is with them. Vince Leone looked exactly as he always did. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of forgettable face that made him perfect for delicate work. He was talking on his phone, gesturing toward the building with the casual confidence of someone who thought he controlled the situation. The rage that Damon had been keeping on a tight leash started to slip. "He brought them here to a medical facility while Sloane's in labor." "Looks that way." "Get Calder on the line. I need to know if he can move her if this goes bad." Mara was already dialing. She spoke quickly, listened, then shook her head. "He says she's too far along. Moving her now could cause hemorrhage or fetal distress. We hold here, or we risk both their lives." From the birthing suite came another cry, longer this time, edged with exhaustion and determination. Damon's hands curled into fists. "Then we hold." He pulled the Glock, checked the chamber by muscle memory. "How many entrances?" 3. Front, service door on the east side, emergency exit on the west, all reinforced steel with electronic locks. "They'll try the front first, traditional, expected." Damon's mind was already running scenarios, calculating angles and timing. When they realize it won't open, they'll split up. 4 to the service entrance, 4 to the emergency exit. Which means we need to be in 2 places at once. 3 places. Someone needs to stay with Sloane. He looked at his sister. That's you. Mara's expression went flat. Like hell. You can't handle 8 armed men alone. I can handle whatever I need to handle. It came out with absolute certainty, the voice he used when discussion was over. But if something gets past me, Sloan needs someone who can shoot straight and think fast. That's you, not me. Damon, this isn't negotiable, Mara. Our daughter is about to be born in the next room. I need to know someone I trust is between her and anyone who makes it through that door. The word daughter hung in the air between them. Mara's expression shifted, something fierce and protective replacing the argument. Fine, but you don't do anything stupid. I'm going to do several stupid things. Try to minimize the fatal ones. He moved toward the hallway, then paused. If I don't make it back, you'll make it back. Mara's voice was steel. You always do. He wanted to believe that, but tonight felt different. Tonight had too many variables, too many unknowns. Tonight he was fighting for something that mattered more than territory or reputation or even his own life. The front entrance camera showed Vince approaching the door, one hand raised in a gesture that might have been conciliatory if Damon didn't know better. Behind him, 3 men fanned out in tactical positions. Damon's phone buzzed. A call from Vince's number. He answered, but didn't speak. Damon. Vince's voice came through smooth and reasonable, the tone of a man conducting business. I know you're in there. I know Sloane's with you. Let's talk like civilized people before this gets messy. You put surveillance on a pregnant woman and sent armed men to her apartment. We're past civilized. I was protecting an asset. You would have done the same. She's not an asset. She's the mother of my child. Damon kept his voice level, conversational, even as his finger rested against the Glock's trigger guard. Why don't you tell me who's paying you to track her, and maybe I'll let you walk away from this? Vince laughed, and there was genuine amusement in it. You think I'm going to give up my employer because you asked nicely? Damon, we've worked together too long for that kind of naivety. Then we've worked together too long for you to think I won't kill you for threatening what's mine. Silence on the other end. When Vince spoke again, the amusement was gone. Here's the situation. I have 8 men with me right now, and 20 more I can call in within the hour. You have a woman in active labor and maybe 1 or 2 loyalists if Mara's still with you. The math isn't in your favor. Math rarely is. Damon was moving through the building now, checking sight lines and cover points. But I've won worse odds. Not while protecting 2 lives you can't afford to lose. Vince's voice dropped, became almost gentle. I'm offering you a way out. Send Sloan out. We take her somewhere safe until the baby's born. And then we all sit down and negotiate terms like adults. Nobody has to die tonight. Except you're not offering safety. You're offering leverage. Damon reached the junction where the main hallway branched toward the service entrance. The second Sloan's out of my protection, she becomes a bargaining chip. Her baby becomes a bargaining chip. That's not a negotiation. That's a hostage situation. Semantics. Survival. He could hear footsteps on the other side of the service door. The predicted split was happening. Last chance, Vince. Walk away. Tell whoever's paying you that the job went sideways. Disappear. I can't do that. Then you're making a choice. Damon ended the call. 3 seconds later, the service door shuddered with impact. They were using a battering ram, professional grade. The steel would hold for maybe 4 or 5 hits before the lock gave way. Damon positioned himself behind a concrete support column with clear sight lines to the door. The Glock felt steady in his hand, an extension of will and purpose. He counted the impacts. 1, 2, 3. And on the 4th, the lock shattered and the door swung inward. 2 men came through fast, weapons up, trained movements. Damon shot the first one in the shoulder, spinning him into his partner. The second man returned fire wild, bullets sparking off concrete. Damon adjusted, put a round through the man's thigh. Both went down. But 2 more were already coming through, and these had learned from their partner's mistakes. They came in low and separated, making themselves harder targets. Damon dropped one with a shot to the knee, but the 4th got close enough to be a problem. The man was big, trained, and fast. He closed the distance before Damon could bring the gun around, driving a shoulder into Damon's chest and slamming him back against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. The Glock went skittering across the floor. Damon drove his elbow into the man's temple, once, twice, feeling bone give on the third hit. The man staggered. Damon grabbed his gun hand, twisted until fingers opened and the weapon fell, then swept the man's legs and rode him down. A quick strike to the throat ended the fight. He retrieved his Glock, breathing hard but controlled. 4 down at the service entrance. That left 4 more, probably hitting the emergency exit right about... The explosion came from the west side of the building, a shaped charge that turned the emergency door into shrapnel. Professional, expensive, and very illegal. Damon was already running. He reached the west corridor as smoke cleared and 4 men poured through the opening. These weren't the hired muscle from earlier. These were operators. Body armor, night vision, the kind of tactical gear that spoke of military training and serious funding. He put 3 rounds center mass into the first man. The bullets hit body armor and the man stumbled but didn't drop. Damon adjusted, shot him in the hip where the armor didn't cover. The man went down screaming. The other 3 scattered into cover, returning fire with professional discipline. Bullets chewed through drywall and ceiling tiles. Damon dropped into a crouch behind an overturned desk, mind racing through options. 3 armed professionals, body armor, superior position. He was outgunned, and they knew it. Then Mara's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Backup's here, coming in hot through the front. Tell them west corridor, 3 hostiles, armored." Already did. The sound of the front entrance slamming open was followed by the distinctive crack of suppressed weapons fire. Damon risked a glance around the desk and saw his backup, 4 men he'd known for years, people who owed him their lives or their freedom, engaging the armored operators from behind. Caught in a crossfire, the operators tried to retreat. 2 made it back through the blown emergency exit. The third took a round to the back of the knee and went down hard. Damon was on him in seconds, weapon pressed to the base of the man's skull. "Who hired you?" The man was gasping through pain, but his eyes were defiant. "Contract work, anonymous client, cash payment. We don't ask questions." "Start asking them." Damon increased pressure with the gun. "Because the alternative is you bleeding out while I go ask your friends." "They don't know either. It came through a broker, encrypted communications, dead drops for payment, military-grade operational security." Damon believed him. This had all the hallmarks of someone with serious resources and serious paranoia. "The broker's name?" "Goes by Cypher. Works out of Montreal. That's all I know. I swear." Not good enough. But Damon didn't shoot him. Instead, he zip-tied the man's hands and dragged him toward the blown emergency exit where his backup was establishing a perimeter. One of his men, Marcus, who'd been with him since the early days, looked up from securing the area. "We've got 2 runners heading east on foot. Want us to pursue?" "Let them go. I need you here." Damon pulled out his phone, called Mara. "Status?" "Calder says she's at 10 centimeters. Transition phase. Could be any minute now." Her voice was tight. "How bad is it out there?" "Contained." "What about Vince?" "Still outside the front entrance. He hasn't moved." "Keep eyes on him." Damon ended the call and turned to Marcus. "I need this building locked down. Nobody in or out except medical personnel. Can you do that?" "Already on it. But boss..." Marcus gestured to the destruction around them. "This isn't random. Someone wanted that woman specifically." "I know." "Any idea who?" "Working on it." Damon's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Send her out, or we start making examples." He showed it to Marcus. "Trace this." "On it." Marcus pulled out a tablet, fingers flying. "Give me 2 minutes." But Damon didn't have 2 minutes. From inside the birthing suite came a sound that stopped his heart. Sloan screaming, raw and terrified. The kind of sound that meant something was desperately wrong. He was moving before conscious thought, weapon still in hand, every instinct focused on getting to her. The corridor seemed endless. The door to the birthing suite was closed, but not locked. He burst through. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Sloan was on the bed, knees up, Calder between her legs with an expression of intense concentration. Mara was at Sloan's head, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement. Monitors beeped with steady urgency. "What's wrong?" Damon's voice came out harder than he intended. Calder didn't look up. "Nothing's wrong." She's crowning. "This is normal." That didn't sound normal. Because pushing out a human being hurts like hell. Sloane's voice was breathless, exhausted, edged with pain and fury. Get out unless you're going to actually help. Damon holstered the Glock, moved to the opposite side of the bed from Mara. What do you need? I need you to... Another contraction hit, and Sloane's words dissolved into a guttural groan as she bore down. Damon could see her entire body straining, every muscle engaged in the most primal act of human existence. Calder's voice was calm, authoritative. Good, Sloane, just like that. Nice controlled push, the head's almost through. Almost isn't through. She gasped for air, her face flushed dark with effort. How much longer? Minutes, maybe less. Calder was doing something Damon couldn't see, his movements practiced and sure. On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can for a count of 10. Can you do that? I can do anything if it means this ends. Damon found himself gripping her hand without meaning to. She squeezed back hard enough to bruise, her nails digging into his palm. He didn't pull away. Here it comes, Calder warned. Deep breath, Sloane. Now push. 1, 2, 3. Sloane bore down with a sound that was half scream, half battle cry. Damon watched her face contort with effort, watched sweat pour down her temples, watched her body do something his mind classified as both miraculous and brutal. 4, 5, 6, keep going, you're doing great. 7, 8, 9, 10. Calder's hands moved with swift precision. Heads out, stop pushing, pant for me. Sloane collapsed back against the pillows, panting like she'd run a marathon. Is the baby? Perfect. I'm just checking for the cord. Calder worked quickly, his expression satisfied. We're clear. One more big push and you meet your daughter. Daughter. The word hit Damon like a physical blow. His daughter. About to be born in an underground clinic while armed men waited outside, while someone with resources and malice wanted Sloane badly enough to send professionals. Damon. Sloane's voice was quiet, almost lost under the beeping monitors. If something goes wrong, nothing's going wrong. He said it with absolute certainty, even though he had no right to that certainty. You're going to do this, she's going to be fine, and then we're going to figure out the rest. The rest is you going back out there to kill people who are trying to kill us. If that's what it takes. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw everything in her eyes, fear and resignation, and something that might have been the ghost of the love they'd burned through in 2 years of marriage. You never changed, you just pretended. I changed. He brushed sweat-dampened hair back from her forehead with his free hand. I learned how to choose what matters. Right now, what matters is in this room. Another contraction built. He could see it in the way her face tightened, the way her grip on his hand became crushing. Okay, Sloane. Calder positioned himself. This is it. Big push, count of 10, and we're done. I can't. You can. Mara's voice was fierce. You're the strongest person I know. You divorced my brother and survived. You can do this. Despite everything, Sloane almost laughed. Then the contraction peaked and she was pushing with every ounce of strength left in her exhausted body. Damon counted with Calder, his voice steady even as his heart hammered against his ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can see shoulders, Calder said. Keep going, keep going. 5, 6, 7. Sloane's scream was primal, endless, the sound of a human body achieving the impossible through sheer force of will. 8, 9, 10, and then Calder was lifting something small and impossibly fragile, something covered in blood and vernix, something that should have been crying but wasn't. Damon's entire world stopped. The baby was silent, too silent. Calder was suctioning her mouth and nose with swift, practiced movements, his expression neutral in a way that made Damon's blood run cold. Why isn't she crying? Sloane's voice cracked. Calder, why isn't she... Give me a second. Calder's hands moved over the tiny body, checking, assessing. He rubbed the baby's back firmly, once, twice. Nothing. Mara's hand found Damon's shoulder, gripping hard. Calder laid the baby on Sloane's chest, still working, still calm. Come on, little one. Let me hear you. The silence stretched like taffy, endless and terrible. Damon found himself praying to gods he didn't believe in, making bargains he had no authority to make. Then, impossibly, miraculously, a cough, a sputter, and finally, blessedly, a thin wail that grew stronger with each second. The baby was crying. His daughter was crying. Sloane was sobbing, her hands coming up to cradle the impossibly small body against her chest. Oh God, she's okay. She's perfect. Calder was smiling now, that rare, genuine smile that came from watching life win against the odds. Apgar score of 9. Strong lungs, good color, excellent reflexes. He clamped and cut the cord with efficient movements. Congratulations, you have a healthy baby girl. Damon couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at the tiny scrunched face pressed against Sloane's chest, at the impossibly small fingers that were already curling and uncurling, at the evidence of something he'd helped create but couldn't fully comprehend. Do you want to hold her? Sloane was looking at him, her face exhausted and radiant and terrified all at once. He didn't trust his voice, didn't trust his hands. But he nodded, and Calder was there, showing him how to support the head, how to cradle the fragile body against his chest. She was so light, so impossibly, terrifyingly light. Her eyes were closed, her face still red from the trauma of birth, but she was breathing and warm and real in a way that made every decision he'd ever made seem small and inconsequential. Hi, he said quietly, stupidly, because what did you say to a person who'd existed for less than 5 minutes? I'm your father. I'm going to keep you safe. It was a promise he had no idea how to keep, but he meant it with every fiber of his being. Mara's voice in his earpiece shattered the moment. Damon, we've got a problem. He looked up, met his sister's eyes. She was staring at something on her phone, her expression gone cold and dangerous. What kind of problem? Marcus traced that text. It's coming from inside our network. Someone on our side is feeding them information in real time. The world came back into sharp, terrible focus. Damon looked down at his daughter, then at Sloane, who was watching him with exhausted awareness. Who? Best guess, Vince has access to our communication protocols. He's been listening to everything. Which meant Vince knew about the birthing suite, knew about Calder, knew exactly where they were and how vulnerable they were at this exact moment. Damon handed the baby back to Sloane with a gentleness that belied the fury building in his chest. Mara, stay here. Nobody gets through that door. Where are you going? To have a conversation with our former fixer. He checked the Glock, his movements mechanical and precise. One way or another, this ends tonight. Sloane grabbed his wrist before he could leave. Don't kill him. Why not? Because our daughter just took her first breath, and I don't want her first day on Earth to be the day you became a murderer for her. I've been a murderer for a lot less. I know. Her eyes were clear despite the exhaustion. But you don't have to be. Not for this. Not anymore. He wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that some problems only had violent solutions, that mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford, that Vince Leone had forfeited his right to consideration the moment he'd put surveillance on a pregnant woman. But his daughter was 6 minutes old, and Sloane was looking at him like she was seeing something worth saving, and the anger in his chest warred with something softer and more dangerous. I'll try. It was the best he could offer. He left before she could ask for more promises he might not be able to keep. The hallway outside the birthing suite was quiet, but Damon could feel the tension humming through the building like a live wire. Marcus met him halfway, tablet in hand. We've got confirmation. Vince has been on a conference call for the last 20 minutes. Audio's encrypted, but we caught fragments, enough to confirm he's coordinating with someone off-site. Can you break the encryption? Given time, but Damon... Marcus hesitated. He's talking about extraction. He's telling someone that the package has been delivered and they need to move on the secondary objective. What secondary objective? Best guess. The baby. They wanted Sloane contained and pregnant. Now that she's delivered, the focus shifts. Cold realization settled in Damon's gut. This had never been about Sloane. She'd been the incubator, the vehicle. What they really wanted was leverage over him, and nothing created leverage like an innocent child. Where's Vince now? Still outside the front entrance, but Damon, if he's listening to our comms, then we stop using comms. Damon pulled out the earpiece, crushed it under his boot. Spread the word, everything verbal, everything face-to-face. Assume every electronic communication is compromised. Marcus nodded and moved off to relay the message. Damon continued toward the front entrance, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Vince was smart, connected, and ruthless. Confronting him directly was playing into expected patterns, so Damon would do the unexpected. He pulled out his personal phone, the one that ran on a completely separate network from his business devices, and dialed a number he hadn't called in 8 months. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, suspicious and sharp. "Who is this?" "Detective Reyes. It's Damon Valenti." Silence. Then, "I thought you were out of the life." "I thought so too. Turns out the life doesn't let go that easily." He could see the front entrance ahead, could see Vince's silhouette through the reinforced glass. "I need to report a crime in progress." "Damon, if this is some kind of attempted kidnapping of a newborn infant, armed assault on a medical facility, conspiracy to commit murder. I have 8 witnesses, physical evidence, and the man coordinating it all standing outside my location right now." He paused. "I'm willing to cooperate fully in exchange for protection for my family." Another silence, longer this time. Elena Reyes was a homicide detective who'd been trying to build a case against Damon's organization for 3 years. She was smart, ethical, and incorruptible. Exactly the kind of cop who would see an opportunity like this and know how to use it. "Where are you?" He gave her the address. "How fast can you get here?" 12 minutes with lights. But Damon, if this is a setup, it's not. I'm done with this life, Elena. I'm done with people who think they can threaten my family and walk away. He watched Vince through the glass, saw him check his phone, saw the confidence in his posture. I'm choosing a different way. I'll be there in 10. She ended the call. Damon pocketed his phone and walked to the front entrance. The lock was still engaged, the steel door firmly in place. He could see Vince clearly now, standing 15 feet back with 3 men flanking him. Damon opened the door. Vince's expression flickered with surprise, then settled into calculated calm. "I didn't expect you to make this easy." "I'm not." Damon stepped outside, leaving the door open behind him. "I'm making this legal." "Legal?" Vince actually smiled. "Since when do you care about legal?" "Since my daughter was born 7 minutes ago and I decided she deserves a father who doesn't spend her childhood looking over his shoulder." Damon's voice was perfectly level. "I've called the police, Vince. They'll be here in 9 minutes. You've got that long to disappear." The smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "I'm really not. Detective Elena Reyes, Major Crimes. I gave her this address, told her about the assault, the attempted kidnapping, everything." He gestured to Vince's men. "When she gets here, she's going to find a blown emergency door, 8 injured men, and enough evidence to put everyone involved away for 20 years. Unless you're gone. You'd burn your own organization. I don't have an organization anymore. I have a daughter and an ex-wife. I never stopped loving, and a very simple choice. Your way or a different way." Damon's hands were steady at his sides. No weapon visible, no threat implied, just absolute certainty. "Choose fast, Vince. The clock's running." Vince stared at him, calculation and rage warring across his face. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. "He's burned. Protocol 7. Extract now." The men with him were already moving, heading for their vehicles with military efficiency. Vince started to follow, then paused. "You think this makes you clean? You think calling the cops erases 15 years? "No, but it gives my daughter a chance at something different." Damon met his former fixer's eyes. "That's more important than anything you or I built. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but at least I'll regret it while watching her grow up." Vince opened his mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. He turned and walked to his SUV without looking back. Within 60 seconds, all 3 vehicles were pulling away, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. Damon stood alone in the parking lot, feeling the weight of what he'd just done settle into his bones. In 9 minutes, police would arrive. In 9 minutes, he'd have to explain everything. The clinic, the assault, his connection to Vince Leone. In 9 minutes, his old life would effectively end. But inside that building, his daughter was breathing her first breaths, and that made everything else worth burning down. He walked back inside, locked the door behind him, and headed toward the birthing suite. He had 9 minutes to hold his daughter and tell Sloane what he'd done. It would have to be enough. Damon found Sloane sitting up in bed, the baby cradled against her chest in that instinctive way new mothers held their children, like letting go might break something fundamental in the universe. Mara stood by the window, her phone dark in her hand, watching the empty parking lot with the vigilance of someone who knew better than to trust silence. Sloane looked up when he entered. "Where's Vince?" "Gone." Damon closed the door behind him, the soft click somehow final. "Along with everyone he brought." "You killed them?" Her voice was flat, factual, the tone of someone who'd learned to ask terrible questions without flinching. "I called the police instead." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mara spun from the window, eyes wide. Sloane went perfectly still, her hand unconsciously protective over the baby's tiny head. "You what?" Mara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Detective Elena Reyes, Major Crimes. She'll be here in—" He checked his watch. 7 minutes. "I told her everything. The assault, the surveillance, Vince's involvement. Offered full cooperation in exchange for protection." Sloane's laugh came out broken and slightly hysterical. "You called the cops. You, Damon Valenti, called the actual police on your own fixer. Former fixer." He moved closer to the bed but didn't sit, didn't crowd her space. "And yes, because the alternative was shooting my way out of this with our 8-minute-old daughter 20 feet away, and you asked me not to be a murderer today. I asked you not to kill Vince specifically. I didn't kill anyone. I made a different choice." He looked at the baby, her impossibly small face peaceful in sleep. "The same choice you made 8 months ago when you left. Clean break, different life. Actually meaning it this time." Mara crossed her arms, her expression caught between disbelief and calculation. "You understand what this means. The moment Reyes gets here, she's going to have questions about this clinic, about Calder, about everything we've built. You're handing her ammunition to dismantle the entire operation." "Good. Let her dismantle it." Damon's voice was steady. "I'm done, Mara. Actually done. Not stepping back while keeping all my connections done. Our daughter is 10 minutes old and someone already tried to use her as leverage. That ends now." "By burning everything down?" Mara's jaw tightened. "What about the people who depend on this network? The families we protect? The businesses we keep running? The balance we maintain?" "You'll maintain it without me. You've always been better at the politics anyway." He met his sister's eyes, saw the hurt beneath the anger. "I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to let me." Sloane shifted the baby carefully, her movements exhausted but practiced, like muscle memory was kicking in faster than conscious thought. "Damon, if you cooperate with Reyes, they're going to want names, connections, evidence. I'll give them Vince and whoever hired him. Nothing else unless it's directly connected to tonight." He finally sat on the edge of the bed, keeping careful distance. "I'm not trying to destroy everything, Sloane. I'm trying to build a wall between our daughter and the life that just tried to kill her mother." "Noble." Mara's tone could have cut glass. "Also naive. You think the people Vince was working for are just going to accept this? You're making yourself a target. I've been a target for 15 years. The difference is now I have something worth protecting more than territory or reputation." He looked at Sloane. "You left because you didn't want our children growing up in this world. I let you go because I thought I couldn't change enough to give you a different one. I was wrong." The baby stirred, making a small sound that might have been discomfort or just the random noises newborns made. Sloane adjusted her hold, rocking slightly. "You're serious? You're actually going to cooperate with a homicide detective?" "Yes. They'll use you. They'll take your cooperation, build their cases, and the moment they don't need you anymore, then I'll deal with that when it happens." Damon's hands were steady in his lap, no fidgeting, no tells. Just the calm that came from making an irrevocable decision. "But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing you and her over everything else." Sloane's eyes were bright with tears she was too stubborn to shed. "You can't just decide to be a different person because a baby was born. People do it every day. They just usually have 9 months to prepare instead of 9 minutes." He smiled, small and sad. "I'm not saying I'll be good at it. I'm not saying I won't screw up. But I'm saying I'm going to try, and I'm going to mean it, And if that's not enough, then at least she'll grow up knowing her father tried. The sound of sirens cut through the moment, distant but approaching. That distinctive wail that meant authority and consequences were coming whether anyone was ready or not. Mara moved to the window again, watching lights flash in the distance. That's multiple units. Reyes brought backup. She's smart. She knows what she's walking into. Damon stood, straightening his shirt despite the bloodstains and cordite residue. I should meet her outside. Calder, you'll need to explain the clinic's setup, prove it's a legitimate medical facility. Dr. Reese Calder, who'd been standing quietly in the corner since the birth, finally spoke. I have all the documentation, licensed physicians, proper equipment, inspection records. This place operates in a legal gray area, but it's not criminal. He paused. Though I imagine Reyes will have questions about why a mafia boss's ex-wife delivered here instead of a hospital. Let me handle Reyes. Damon looked at Sloane one more time. Are you okay if I leave you for a few minutes? I survived 8 months without you. I can manage 10 more minutes. But her voice was gentler than her words. Go do your confession. Try not to get arrested before you've held your daughter more than once. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he was moving, Mara following, both of them heading toward the front entrance, where red and blue lights were already painting the parking lot in strobing urgency. Detective Elena Reyes stepped out of the lead vehicle before it fully stopped, her movements controlled and purposeful. She was 40, Latina, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a reputation for playing strictly by the book. 2 uniformed officers flanked her, hands resting on holstered weapons. Damon opened the door before she could knock, hands visible and empty. Detective. Valenti. She looked past him into the building, cataloging details. You said there was an assault. I see a blown door and blood, but no bodies. The injured fled before you arrived, but I have witnesses, evidence, and surveillance footage showing the entire incident. He stepped aside. Everything you need to build a case. Reyes studied him like he was a puzzle with missing pieces. In 3 years of investigating you, you've never voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. Why start now? Because 3 years ago, I didn't have a daughter who was born 20 minutes ago while armed men tried to breach this facility. He kept his voice level, factual. My priorities changed. So did your strategy. She gestured to one of the officers. Clear the building. I want a full sweep. You'll find Dr. Calder and his staff in the birthing suite with my ex-wife and newborn. Everyone else is security personnel who defended this location against hostile forces. Damon met her eyes. I'm not asking for immunity, Detective. I'm asking for protection for my family while we cooperate fully with your investigation into tonight's events. And what exactly do you think happened tonight? Coordinated assault orchestrated by Vincent Leone, my former fixer, on behalf of an unknown employer. Surveillance on Sloane Hart beginning approximately 3 weeks ago. Attempted extraction during active labor. Multiple armed intrusions. He pulled out his phone, held it up. I have text messages from an unknown number, call logs, and the names of everyone involved that I could identify. Reyes took the phone, scrolled through it with practiced efficiency. Her expression remained neutral, but Damon could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. This was major case material. Organized crime, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping. The kind of caller that made careers. This is convenient, she said finally. Almost too convenient. You call me in the middle of the night, hand me everything wrapped in a bow, and expect me to believe you've had a sudden crisis of conscience? I expect you to believe that someone threatening my newborn daughter is a line I won't let anyone cross. Not even myself. He paused. You've been investigating me for 3 years, Elena. You know I don't bluff and I don't waste time on elaborate deceptions. Either this is real, or it's the most complicated trap ever set for a homicide detective, which seems more likely. She considered this, then handed the phone to one of her officers. Bag it. Evidence. To Damon. I want a full statement. I want access to your security footage, and I want to interview everyone present, starting with your sister. You'll have it all. But first, Damon's voice hardened slightly. I need your word that Sloane and the baby are under police protection from this moment forward. No exceptions, no gaps in coverage. I can arrange protective custody, not custody, protection. They stay here until Calder clears them medically. Then they move to a secure location of their choosing with police presence. Not a safe house, not a facility. Somewhere they want to be. Reyes's eyes narrowed. You're in no position to dictate terms. I'm in the perfect position. You want my cooperation, you want Vince Leone, you want whoever hired him. I'm offering you all of it. In exchange, you make sure the people I'm doing this for stay alive. He didn't move, didn't blink. That's not a negotiation, that's the price. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of police radios and the distant sound of more units arriving. Finally, Reyes nodded once, sharp and decisive. Fine. Protective detail on your ex-wife and child, subject to their cooperation with the investigation. But Valenti, if I find out this is some kind of play, if there's any indication you're using my department for your own purposes, the deal is off, and you go down hard. Understood? She gestured toward the building. Show me everything. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and evidence collection. Damon walked Reyes through the facility, showing her the blown emergency exit, the blood trails, the spent casings. He gave her names, descriptions, timeline. Everything except the details that would compromise people not involved in tonight's attack. Mara's statement was terse, but complete. Marcus and the other security personnel corroborated the defensive nature of their actions. Calder provided medical records showing Sloane's admission time and the baby's birth, establishing timeline and legitimate medical purpose. Through it all, Damon could hear his daughter crying periodically from the birthing suite, that thin, demanding wail of a newborn who wanted food or warmth or just to be held. Each cry made his chest tighten with something he didn't have a name for yet. Reyes noticed. You haven't even held her properly yet, have you? Once, for maybe 90 seconds before everything went sideways. He watched another forensic technician photograph bullet impacts. Seemed more important to make sure she had a chance to turn 1 day old. Most fathers don't ensure that by calling the cops on their own organization. Most fathers don't run criminal organizations. He looked at her directly. I'm trying to be a different kind of father, starting tonight. She studied him with that unreadable cop expression. You know, this doesn't erase anything you've done. Whatever deal we make, it's about tonight and Vince Leone. Your past doesn't disappear. I know, but maybe my future can be different. He heard footsteps and turned to see Sloane in the doorway of the birthing suite, the baby wrapped in a hospital blanket against her chest. She looked exhausted and fierce and somehow more beautiful than he remembered. Reyes followed his gaze, then stepped back. Go, we can finish this later. Damon didn't need to be told twice. He crossed to Sloane in a few long strides, his hands hovering uncertainly near the baby. You should be resting. I've been resting for an hour. I needed to see that you were actually doing this. She shifted the baby slightly. The detective seems convinced you're serious. I am serious. I know. Sloane's voice was soft. I can see it. That's what scares me. Why? Because if you're serious about changing, about being different, then I have to decide if I believe you, if I trust you, if I'm willing to risk us again. She looked down at their daughter. And that terrifies me more than the men with guns did. Damon felt something crack open in his chest, some carefully maintained wall he'd built between who he was and who he wanted to be. I don't expect you to trust me. I haven't earned that yet. Maybe I never will. But I'm asking for the chance to try. The baby started fussing again, small, unhappy sounds escalating toward a full cry. Sloane rocked her gently. She's hungry. Calder says I should try to nurse. Do you need help or privacy? Or... Damon realized he had no idea what new mothers needed. I don't know what you need. Neither do I. But Sloane smiled slightly. That's the terrifying part about being a parent. Nobody knows what they're doing. They just pretend until it works. That I can do. I've been pretending to know what I'm doing for years. She laughed, tired and real. Come sit with me. You can hold her while I figure out how to get comfortable. They moved back into the birthing suite, which had been transformed from a delivery room into something almost peaceful. The harsh lights were dimmed, the medical equipment pushed to the sides. Mara had disappeared, probably giving her statement to Reyes or coordinating with the remaining security. Damon sat in the chair beside the bed while Sloane carefully transferred the baby to his arms. She was so light, so impossibly fragile, her face scrunched in that universal expression of newborn displeasure. Support her head, Sloane instructed. Like that. Now hold her against your chest so she can hear your heartbeat. He did, feeling the tiny body settle against him with a small sigh. The crying stopped. For a moment there was just breathing, his, hers, the baby's rapid flutter. She likes you, Sloane observed, maneuvering herself into position with pillows and blankets. She doesn't know any better yet. Don't do that. Don't dismiss yourself before you've even started. She held out her arms. Okay, give her here. Let's see if we can figure this out. The next several minutes were awkward and intimate and completely surreal. Damon watched Sloane struggle to get the baby to latch, saw the frustration cross her face, heard the tiny frustrated cries escalate, then finally, mercifully, stop as instinct kicked in and the baby began to nurse. Sloane exhaled slowly, her whole body relaxing. Okay, we're doing it. We're actually doing this. You're doing it. I'm just watching. You called the police and burned your entire network. That's not nothing. She looked at him over the baby's head. I need to know if you're going to regret this tomorrow, next week, next year when our daughter asks why her father can't do certain things or go certain places because he cooperated with law enforcement. Damon thought about that, really thought about it, not just the automatic response, but the truth underneath. I might regret parts of it. I might miss the power or the respect or the simplicity of solving problems with money and force. But I won't regret choosing you and her over that life. Even if you never take me back, even if all I get is supervised visits and child support payments, this was still the right choice. Tears were sliding down Sloane's face now, silent and unchecked. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes me remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. The person you were before the life consumed everything. She wiped her eyes with her free hand. The person I've been trying to forget for 8 months. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not even asking you to forgive. I'm just asking you to let me be her father, however that looks. The baby's eyes were closed now, her small mouth working rhythmically. Sloane stroked the soft dark hair with one finger. We need to name her. She can't just be the baby forever. Do you have something in mind? I had a list, about 40 names that I kept changing every week. She smiled slightly. But looking at her now, only one feels right. Elena, after your grandmother. Damon's throat closed. His grandmother had been the one constant in his chaotic childhood, the woman who'd taught him that strength and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. She'd died when he was 17, and he'd named nothing after her because nothing had felt worthy of the honor. Until now. Elena, he repeated, testing it. What about a middle name? May, for my mother. Sloane looked at him. Elena May, if that's okay with you. It's perfect. He reached out, brushed one finger against Elena's tiny hand. She gripped it reflexively, her fingers impossibly small around his. Hi, Elena May. Welcome to the complicated disaster that's going to be your life. Sloane laughed wetly. That's not the traditional greeting. Traditional doesn't seem to be working out for us. A knock on the door interrupted them. Mara stuck her head in, her expression carefully neutral. Reyes wants to talk to you both. She's got preliminary information on the surveillance. Damon looked at Sloane, who nodded. Give me 2 minutes to finish feeding her and get decent. Mara withdrew. Damon stood, giving Sloane privacy to adjust herself and the baby. When she was ready, he helped her stand, steadied her when exhaustion made her sway. How bad is the pain? Manageable. Calder gave me something after the delivery. She transferred Elena to his arms again. You hold her while I talk to Reyes. I need to look like a competent adult, not someone who just pushed a human out of her body an hour ago. They walked out together, presenting a united front, even though Damon could see the toll the last few hours had taken on Sloane. Reyes was waiting in what passed for Calder's office, her expression grave. I've got preliminary results from the phone forensics, she said without preamble. The number that texted you tonight has been in contact with 17 different individuals over the last month. Most are low-level hired muscle, but 3 names stood out. She pulled up images on her tablet. Recognize any of these? Damon looked at the photos. Two were unfamiliar, hired operators, probably from out of state, but the third made ice settle in his stomach. Michael Torino, Sloan inhaled sharply. Your father's old partner, the one you pushed out 5 years ago. The same. Damon stared at the photo, pieces clicking into place. Torino's been trying to regain influence for years. He knew the easiest way to hurt me was through family. Reyes's eyes sharpened. You're saying this was personal? Revenge? I'm saying Michael Torino has resources, connections, and motivation to come after anyone I care about. He's smart enough to use proxies like Vince and ruthless enough to target a pregnant woman if it meant leverage. Damon looked at Elena sleeping in his arms. He didn't want Sloan dead. He wanted her as a bargaining chip, and once the baby was born, he'd have 2 bargaining chips, Sloan finished quietly. Reyes made a note. Do you have evidence connecting Torino to Leon? Not direct evidence, but I can give you patterns, transactions, connections, enough for you to build a case if you dig deep enough. Damon met her eyes. Torino operates through layers. You're going to need warrants, surveillance, financial forensics. But if you're serious about taking him down, I'll give you everything I have. In exchange for what? Protection for Sloan and Elena until Torino is contained. And Damon paused. I want immunity from prosecution for anything I disclose related to Torino's operations, provided it's not connected to violent crimes I personally committed. Reyes's laugh was short and sharp. That's a hell of an ask. It's a fair ask in exchange for handing you a major organized crime figure with 15 years of active operations. She considered this, her cop face giving nothing away. Finally, I'll take it to the DA. No promises, but I'll make the case. She looked at Sloan. Mrs. Hart, I'm going to need your cooperation too. Statement about the surveillance, the stalking behavior, everything you documented. It's Ms. Hart, or Valenti, depending on which paperwork you're looking at. Sloan straightened despite her obvious exhaustion. And yes, I'll cooperate fully. I have cloud storage with photos, timestamps, and recordings going back 3 weeks. I'll need access to that. You'll have it. Sloan pulled out her phone, started typing. I'm sending you the login credentials now. Everything's organized by date and category. Reyes's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. You're very prepared for someone who was supposedly hiding a pregnancy. I was hiding the pregnancy from Damon, not from reality. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how deep it went. Sloan finished typing, sent the message. Now you'll know too. The baby, Elena, started stirring again, small sounds of discomfort building toward distress. Damon rocked her gently, the motion more instinct than skill, but it seemed to work. She settled, her tiny face relaxing back into sleep. Reyes watched this with an expression Damon couldn't quite read. You're serious about this? About changing? Yes. Good. Because the moment you step outside this building, every person who knows what you were is going to see what you're becoming, and not all of them are going to like it. She closed her tablet. I'll have units here within 30 minutes for protective detail. In the meantime, you don't leave this facility. Nobody in or out except medical personnel and law enforcement. Understood. Damon shifted Elena slightly, adjusting to her weight. How long until we know about the immunity deal? 48 hours, maybe less if the DA sees the value. But Valenti... She fixed him with a hard stare. If you're playing me, if this is some elaborate scheme, I will bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. Clear? Crystal. She nodded once and left, taking her officers with her. The sudden silence felt heavy, weighted with everything unsaid. Sloan sank into a chair, the adrenaline visibly draining from her body. This is really happening. You're really cooperating with police to take down Torino. Yes. He's going to come after you. The moment he knows you've turned, he's going to use every resource he has to destroy you. Let him try. Damon looked down at Elena, her perfect tiny features peaceful in sleep. He already tried to use you and her. Whatever he does to me is just business. Business that could get you killed. I've been at risk of that for 15 years. At least now it's for something that matters. Sloan closed her eyes, her hands pressed to her face. I don't know if I can do this. If I can trust that you've actually changed and this isn't just another version of the same lie, then don't trust me yet. Watch me. Let me prove it. He crossed to her, knelt carefully so he was at eye level without jostling the baby. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I burned through all my second chances before you even left. But I'm asking anyway, because the alternative is walking away from the only two people who make me want to be better. She opened her eyes, and they were red-rimmed and exhausted and full of something fragile. If you hurt her, if you disappoint her the way you disappointed me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. That's not good enough. I know, but it's all I have to offer right now. A long moment passed, just the sound of Elena's breathing and the distant murmur of police activity. Finally, Sloan reached out, touched his face with one hand. We're going to take this so slowly, one day at a time. You prove you can be the father she needs, and maybe we'll talk about the rest. One day at a time, Damon repeated. I can do that. You better. She managed a tired smile. Because our daughter deserves a father who shows up, not one who promises and disappears. I'll be here. However that looks, whatever it takes, I'll be here. Elena chose that moment to wake fully, her face scrunching in preparation for a cry. Damon stood, resumed the gentle rocking that seemed to soothe her. You're getting good at that, Sloan observed. Survival instinct. Stop the crying before it gets worse. That's actually pretty solid parenting strategy. They smiled at each other, and for a moment it felt almost normal, like they were just two exhausted new parents figuring it out together, instead of two people trying to navigate a minefield of past mistakes and uncertain futures. Then Mara appeared in the doorway, her expression urgent. We've got a problem. Torino knows. The birthing suite had transformed into something almost peaceful in the minutes Damon had been gone. Sloan was propped up against pillows, the baby nestled against her chest, skin to skin beneath a warm blanket. Calder was documenting vitals with quiet efficiency while Mara stood guard by the door, her weapon holstered but her posture still vigilant. All three looked up when Damon entered. Sloane's eyes found his immediately, reading something in his expression that made her arms tighten protectively around their daughter. What did you do? He closed the door behind him, moved to the bed with careful deliberation. I called Detective Elena Reyes. She'll be here in about 7 minutes with a full tactical response team. The room went completely still. Even Calder stopped writing, his pen frozen above the chart. Mara spoke first, her voice dangerously quiet. You called the police. I did. To this location, where we have an unlicensed medical facility, 8 injured men, and enough weapons violations to put us all away for a decade. Calder's license is current, and his facility meets all medical standards, just not all bureaucratic ones. The injured men attacked us first. There are cameras that prove it, and the weapons were used in self-defense of a woman in active labor. Damon kept his gaze on Sloan. Detective Reyes has been trying to build a case against my organization for 3 years. I'm handing her everything she needs in exchange for protection for you and our daughter. Sloan's face had gone pale. Damon, do you understand what you just did? You can't just walk away from your life. I'm not walking away. I'm burning it to the ground. He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch but not presuming. Vince Leone compromised our security. He sold information about you to someone with enough resources to hire professional contractors. That means everyone in my network is potentially compromised. Every ally could be a threat. So your solution is to destroy everything you've built? My solution is to choose something different. His voice was steady, absolute. Our daughter is 23 minutes old. In 23 minutes, she's already been in more danger than most people face in a lifetime. I'm not doing this for another day, let alone 18 years. Mara moved closer, her expression conflicted. You're talking about cooperating, testimony, evidence, names. I'm talking about ending this, completely. Damon looked at his sister. You're out too if you want. New identities, protection, the whole package. Reyes will deal because I can give her things she's wanted for years. And if I don't want out, then you disappear before she gets here. Take Marcus and anyone else who wants to stay in the life. I'll make sure your names stay clear of everything I give her. He paused. But Mara, you just watched your niece be born in a bunker while armed men tried to break down the door. Is that really the future you want? Mara's jaw tightened. She looked at the baby in Sloane's arms, then back at her brother. You're asking me to betray people who've been loyal to us for years. I'm asking you to survive. There's a difference. The baby made a small sound, something between a whimper and a sigh. Sloane adjusted her position, murmuring soft reassurances. The mundane gentleness of it stood in stark contrast to the conversation tearing through the room. Calder cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. I've been patching up casualties of this life for 30 years. Most of them don't make it to retirement age. He looked pointedly at Damon. The ones who do are the ones smart enough to know when to stop. Easy for you to say, Mara shot back. You're not the one with 15 years of history that just got weaponized. And neither is she, Damon gestured to Sloane. She left because she wanted a life that didn't involve this. I signed the papers because I thought I was protecting her. Turns out walking away just made her a target without protection. Sloane's voice was quiet but clear. That's not fair, and you know it. I was a target because someone wants leverage over you. The baby was always going to be a target, divorce or no divorce. Exactly. Which is why the only way to protect her is to remove the leverage entirely. Damon's hands curled into fists against his thighs. No organization means no enemies. No enemies means no one has a reason to come after a child. You're being naive. Mara's tone was sharp. You think giving Detective Reyes a few names is going to erase 15 years of making enemies? They'll still know who you are. They'll still remember what you did. Then I'll deal with it legally. Restraining orders, police protection, the systems that normal people use. Normal people don't have our kind of enemies. Normal people don't have our kind of daughter either. He looked at the baby again, at the impossibly small fingers curled against Sloane's skin. She deserves a chance at something better than this. The weight of his words settled over the room like a physical presence. Mara stared at him for a long moment, then turned away, her shoulders tight with tension. I need to think. You have about 5 minutes. She left without another word, the door closing behind her with careful control. Calder finished his notations, then moved toward the exit himself. I'll give you two some privacy. But Damon, when the police arrive, I'm telling them the truth about everything medical. The rest is your story to tell. Understood. Thank you, Reese. Calder nodded and left, leaving Damon alone with Sloane and their daughter. The silence stretched between them, filled with 8 months of separation and recrimination and all the things they'd never properly said. Sloane was the one who broke it. You really called the police? I did. On yourself. On everyone who made tonight necessary. He shifted closer, his voice dropping. Sloane, I can't undo the last 8 months. I can't give you back the time you spent pregnant and alone and scared. But I can make sure our daughter grows up in a world where her last name doesn't come with a target on her back. You think it's that simple? Just cooperate and everything goes away? No, I think it's complicated and dangerous and probably stupid. He finally let himself reach out, let his fingers ghost over the baby's downy hair. But it's the only move I have that doesn't involve more violence, and you asked me not to kill Vince, so I'm trying something different. Sloane's eyes were bright with tears that hadn't fallen yet. I left you because I couldn't live with the constant fear. The wondering if every phone call was going to be the one telling me you were dead. And now you're telling me you're giving testimony against dangerous people, which sounds like exactly the thing that gets people killed. Witness protection exists. Witness protection is a fairy tale for people who don't know how this really works. She shifted the baby higher against her chest, a protective gesture that was pure instinct. You know how many witnesses disappear every year? How many safe houses get compromised? Detective Reyes is good at her job. Being good at your job doesn't stop a bullet. Neither does running. He met her eyes, held them. I ran from this once, signed the papers, moved to the edges of the territory, tried to convince myself that distance equaled safety. It didn't work. They found you anyway. They tracked you, stalked you, waited until you were at your most vulnerable. So your solution is to paint an even bigger target on all of us? My solution is to remove the reason for the target. His voice was steady, patient, the tone he used when he needed someone to really hear him. Right now, I'm valuable. I have connections, resources, knowledge. People want to use me or eliminate me because I'm a player in the game. But if I give everything to the police, if I testify, if I cooperate fully, then I'm just a liability, a used resource. There's no point in coming after me because I've already given away everything of value. Sloan stared at him, and he could see her sharp mind working through the logic, testing it for holes. Unless someone wants revenge. Revenge requires knowing where to find us. Witness protection means new identities, new location, new everything. And you trust the system to protect us better than you could protect us yourself. I trust that the system doesn't have Vince Leone on the payroll. He said it quietly, but the words landed with impact. Someone inside my organization sold us out, Sloan. Maybe multiple someones. I can't protect you if I can't trust my own people. The baby stirred, made a small noise of discontent. Sloan automatically began rocking, a gentle sway that seemed to calm the infant immediately. Damon watched the motion, watched his daughter settle back into sleep, and felt something in his chest that might have been hope or might have been terror. "What's her name?" he asked. Sloan blinked, thrown by the change of subject. I didn't want to choose without you. You carried her for 9 months. You get first choice." "That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" He gestured between them, encompassing everything. The 8 months of separation, the terror of tonight, the impossibly small life they'd created together. "Because I don't have a map for this, Sloan. I've never done any of this before." Her laugh was small and broken. "Neither have I. I spent 8 months convincing myself I could do this alone, that I'd be fine as a single mother, that you didn't need to know. And then tonight happened, and I realized I was kidding myself about all of it. You're not alone anymore, aren't I? You're talking about witness protection, new identities, disappearing into some government program. That sounds pretty alone to me." "It doesn't have to be." He let the words hang there, fragile and enormous. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for the last 8 months. I'm not even asking you to trust me. But I'm asking you to let me try to do this right." "And what does right look like to you?" "Honestly, I have no idea." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and adrenaline making his movements jerky. "But it probably starts with making sure our daughter has both parents who are alive and free. Everything else we can figure out as we go." Sloan looked down at the baby, then back at him. "Elena." "What?" "Her name. Elena." She touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "It means bright, shining light, and May for the month she was born, even though it's technically still April for another hour. Elena May." Damon tested the name, found it fit perfectly. "It's beautiful. It's a name that doesn't scream Mafia royalty anyway. Neither did Sloan Hart, but you still ended up married to one." "That was temporary insanity brought on by excellent cheekbones and false promises." "The cheekbones were real," he almost smiled. "The promises I meant when I made them." "I know." Her voice went soft. "That's what made it worse. You really believed we could make it work, that love was enough to bridge the gap between my world and yours." "I still believe it. Even after everything?" "Especially after everything." He leaned forward, close enough that he could smell the unique scent of new baby mixed with Sloane's familiar perfume. "You're the only person who ever made me want to be different, better. The only one who looked at what I did and saw past it to who I might be underneath. And you're the only person who ever made me feel simultaneously safe and terrified." She adjusted Elena's position, the movement automatic and sure, despite being a brand new mother. "You were protection and danger all wrapped up in one extremely complicated package." "Was?" "Am. Present tense. Still complicated, possibly more so now that you've decided to blow up your entire life." Before Damon could respond, the sound of multiple vehicles pulling up outside filtered through the walls. Car doors slamming, radio chatter, the unmistakable sounds of law enforcement arriving in force. He stood, moved to the window. 6 police cruisers, 2 unmarked sedans, and what looked like a tactical van. Detective Elena Reyes was stepping out of one of the unmarked cars, her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression all business. They're here. He turned back to Sloane. Last chance to tell me this is the stupidest thing I've ever done and you want no part of it. It is the stupidest thing you've ever done. She met his eyes. But I'm too exhausted to come up with a better plan, and you're right that we can't stay here. So I guess we're doing this. We're doing this. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't make me regret trusting you. Not again. The weight of that request settled into his bones, heavy and precious. I promise I'll try. That's not very reassuring. It's the most honest thing I can give you. She nodded slowly. Then I guess it'll have to be enough. Damon moved to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, I never stopped loving you. Even when I signed the papers, even when you made it clear you were done, I just loved you enough to let you go. And now? Now I'm hoping you'll let me try to earn my way back. He opened the door before she could respond, stepped into the hallway where Mara was waiting with Marcus and the rest of his people. His sister's expression was unreadable. They're at the front entrance. Reyes wants you to come out with your hands visible. Are you staying or going? I'm staying. Mara's jaw was tight. Not because I agree with what you're doing, because that's my niece in there, and I'm not leaving her unprotected while you negotiate with cops. Fair enough. He looked at Marcus. You? I'm out, boss. This isn't the life for me anymore either. Marcus gestured to 3 of the other men. Rodriguez, Chen, and Dimitri feel the same way. We'll cooperate if it means a clean exit. Damon nodded, doing the math. 4 people willing to testify was more than enough to take down the entire network. And the rest of you? The remaining men exchanged glances. One of them, Tony, who'd been with the organization since before Damon took over, spoke for the group. We're ghosts, boss. By morning, you won't be able to find us if you tried. Smart. Damon pulled out his phone, sent a quick encrypted message with a list of names and locations, everything Tony and his crew would need to disappear properly. That should buy you 72 hours. Use it well. Appreciate it. Tony held out his hand. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. This life eats people alive. Better to get out while you still can. They shook, and then Tony and his people were moving, heading for the blown emergency exit and the vehicles they'd left in various locations around the perimeter. Within 2 minutes, they were gone. Damon turned to Calder. You ready to talk to the police about your medical credentials? I've been ready for years. It'll actually be nice to legitimize this place. Calder gestured around the clinic. I'm tired of running a glorified field hospital. Time to become a real practice. They're going to ask questions about your patient list. And I'm going to invoke doctor-patient confidentiality for everyone except tonight's events. Calder's expression was firm. I'll cooperate fully about the assault and the birth, but I'm not burning 30 years of patience because you decided to go straight. Fair enough? Damon looked at Mara one more time. Stay with Sloane and Elena. Don't let anyone in that room except medical personnel and Detective Reyes. What are you going to tell her? Everything. He started toward the front entrance, Marcus and the others falling in behind him. Because half-truths are how we got into this mess. Time to try radical honesty and see if it works any better. The front entrance was exactly as he'd left it. Reinforced steel, electronic locks, currently surrounded by enough law enforcement to invade a small country. Damon could see Detective Reyes through the glass, her hand resting on her service weapon but not drawing it. He unlocked the door from the inside, then pushed it open with both hands raised and empty. Detective Reyes, thank you for coming so quickly. Elena Reyes was 42, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for being absolutely incorruptible. She looked Damon up and down, taking in the blood on his hands and clothes, the exhaustion written across his face. Damon Valenti. When you called, I thought it was a trap. It's not. It's an offer. He kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. I'm prepared to give you everything you need to dismantle my organization in exchange for witness protection for myself, my ex-wife, and our newborn daughter. Reyes's eyes narrowed. Your daughter was just born? 28 minutes ago, inside this facility, while armed contractors hired by my former fixer tried to extract her and her mother. He gestured to the building. You'll find evidence of forced entry, discharged weapons, and 8 injured men who can corroborate the attack. I'm prepared to testify about all of it. And in exchange, like I said, protection, new identities, a chance for my daughter to grow up without a target on her back. Reyes studied him for a long moment. You understand what you're offering. Full cooperation means names, locations, financial records, everything. It means testifying in open court against people who will want you dead. I understand. It also means I'm going to verify every piece of information you give me. One lie, one omission, and the deal's off. I'm counting on it. Damon lowered his hands slowly. I'm not trying to play you, detective. I'm trying to save my family. Those are two very different motivations. Show me your hands. Reyes's voice was pure command. Damon held them out. Blood, not his, was dried and cracking across his palms and knuckles. Reyes pulled out a evidence bag and a swab kit, collected samples with practiced efficiency. Whose blood? 2 of the contractors who breached the emergency exit. I shot them in self-defense. They're inside, injured, but alive. And the others? Various states of unconscious or wounded. None dead. I wasn't trying to kill anyone tonight, just protect my family long enough to get help. Reyes sealed the evidence bags, then gestured to her team. Martinez, Chen, secure the building. Anyone inside gets medical attention and identification. I want statements from everyone. She looked back at Damon. You're coming with me. We're going to have a very long conversation. I need 5 minutes with my daughter first. You need to be in custody. This isn't a negotiation. Detective. Marcus stepped forward, his hands also raised. I'm Marcus Chen, part of Valenti's security detail. I'm also prepared to cooperate fully, but that newborn in there just went through a traumatic birth while her mother was under attack. 5 minutes for the father to say goodbye before you take him into custody isn't unreasonable. Reyes looked between them, weighing the request. 5 minutes. Supervised. 2 officers with you the entire time. Agreed. Damon started moving before she could change her mind, 2 uniformed officers falling in beside him as he headed back toward the birthing suite. Sloane looked up when he entered, her expression tight with worry. That was fast. I have 5 minutes, then they're taking me in for questioning. He moved to the bed, sat carefully on the edge. Elena was still asleep against Sloane's chest, her tiny face peaceful and unaware of the chaos surrounding her entrance into the world. What did you tell them? Everything, or everything I could, in 3 minutes of conversation. He touched Elena's hand, felt her impossibly small fingers curl reflexively around his thumb. Reyes is going to verify it all, which means this is going to take time, days, maybe weeks of interviews and testimony. And we're supposed to just wait here while you're in custody? Reyes will arrange safe housing for you and Elena, probably a hotel under police protection until we can work out the details of witness protection. He looked up at her. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know this is scary and uncertain and probably feels like I'm making decisions without consulting you. You are making decisions without consulting me. You're right. I am. Because I saw one path that might work, and I took it before I could second-guess myself into paralysis. His thumb traced circles over Elena's tiny knuckles. But from here on out, we make decisions together about where we go, what we tell the authorities, how we want to rebuild our lives, all of it. Sloane was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on Elena's back. I'm terrified. So am I. That's not reassuring. Would you prefer I lie and tell you everything's going to be fine? Maybe. She almost smiled. Just a little lie. A comforting one. Okay, here's a lie. I have everything under control. I know exactly what's going to happen next. And by this time tomorrow, we'll all be safely tucked away somewhere with new identities and a guaranteed happy ending. That's a terrible lie. I warned you it would be. He leaned forward, pressed a kiss to Elena's downy head. She smelled like soap and something indefinable that he would later learn was just the scent of new baby, milk and hope and possibilities. Here's the truth instead. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm terrified that I just made the biggest mistake of my life. But I'm more terrified of the alternative, which is watching our daughter grow up in a world where every stranger could be a threat. And you think the government can protect us better than you could? I think the government has resources I don't. Legal frameworks, oversight, accountability. He pulled back enough to meet Sloane's eyes. I've spent 15 years protecting myself with violence and fear. It hasn't made me safer. It's just made me more isolated and paranoid. Maybe it's time to try trusting something bigger than my own ability to hurt people who threaten me. One of the officers cleared his throat. Time's up, Mr. Valenti. Damon nodded, started to stand. Sloan caught his wrist. Don't do anything stupid while you're in custody. Don't try to be a hero. Just answer their questions and come back to us. That's the plan. Plans change. Not this one. He covered her hand with his. I'm done running. I'm done fighting. I'm just trying to be the father our daughter deserves. He stood, let the officers escort him out of the birthing suite and through the clinic's halls. More police had arrived, their presence transforming the quiet medical facility into something resembling a crime scene. Calder was talking to a detective near the emergency exit, his manner calm and professional. Mara was nowhere to be seen, probably staying close to Sloan and Elena as he'd asked. Detective Reyes was waiting by one of the unmarked sedans. She opened the back door, gestured for him to get in. I'm not cuffing you unless you give me a reason to. I won't. Good, because I have about 700 questions and I'd like to get through them while your memory is fresh. Damon slid into the back seat. The door closed with a solid thunk, and then they were pulling away from the clinic, leaving behind the only family he had and the daughter he'd held for all of 5 minutes. The drive to the police station took 18 minutes. Reyes didn't speak during it, just made notes on a tablet while her partner drove. Damon used the time to organize his thoughts, to figure out what he could say and what he needed to hold back, to calculate the exact balance of cooperation and self-preservation. The station was quiet at 4 in the morning, just a few officers on overnight shifts and the holding cells mostly empty. Reyes led him to an interview room that smelled like stale coffee and desperation. A small space with a table, 3 chairs, and a camera in the corner recording everything. Sit. Reyes gestured to the chair facing the camera. Water? Coffee? Water would be good. She left, returned 2 minutes later with a bottle of water and a thick folder. She sat across from him, her partner taking the third chair, and placed a digital recorder on the table between them. This is Detective Elena Reyes conducting an interview with Damon Valenti regarding the events of April 30th/May 1st, 2026. Mr. Valenti has agreed to cooperate voluntarily and has declined legal representation at this time. Is that correct? It is. For the record, you understand that anything you say can and will be used in court? I understand. And you're still willing to proceed? I am. Reyes nodded, started the recorder. Let's begin with tonight. What time did you receive the call from Sloan Hart? And so Damon talked. He walked them through the phone call, the drive to Sloan's apartment, the men he'd found waiting in her hallway. He described the van, the surveillance setup, the exact words they'd used. He gave them Vince Leone's name and phone number, described the relationship, explained the breach of trust. He told them about the drive to Calder's clinic, about the vehicles that had followed them, about the motorcycle he'd disabled, and the sedan they'd evaded. He described the assault on the clinic in tactical detail, entry points, weapons used, the exact sequence of events. He gave them Marcus Chen's name as a corroborating witness, along with Rodriguez, Dimitri, and everyone else who'd been present and willing to testify. And through it all, Reyes took notes and asked follow-up questions and slowly built a picture of a criminal organization that was about to collapse under the weight of its own betrayals. Tell me about Vince Leone, she said after they'd covered the immediate events. How long has he worked for you? 3 years? He was a fixer, handled jobs that required discretion and connections outside my normal network. What kind of jobs? Damon paused, weighing his words. Information gathering? Logistics? Occasionally enforcement when diplomacy failed. Enforcement meaning violence? Enforcement meaning making it clear that certain behaviors had consequences. Reyes's eyes were sharp. We're going to need specifics if you want protection. Vague allusions aren't going to cut it. I understand, but I need something from you first. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm in the perfect position to negotiate. You want to dismantle a criminal organization. I can give you everything you need to do that. Names, locations, financial records, testimony that will hold up in court. But I need to know that my family is safe before I hand you information that will put targets on all our backs. Reyes leaned back in her chair, studying him. What are you asking for? Protective custody for Sloan and Elena starting immediately. Not a hotel with a patrol car outside. Real protection. Safe house. Federal marshals. The works. That level of protection requires authorization I don't have at 4 in the morning. Then get it. Damon kept his voice level, reasonable. Make some calls. Wake up whoever you need to wake up. Because, detective, I'm giving you 15 years of criminal enterprise on a silver platter. That's worth a few phone calls. She stared at him for a long moment, then stood. I'll be back. She left him alone with her partner, a younger detective named Morrison, who looked like he was trying to decide if Damon was dangerous or just desperate. They sat in silence for 7 minutes before Reyes returned, her expression carefully neutral. I spoke to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're willing to authorize protective custody pending verification of your information. Sloan Hart and your daughter will be moved to a federal safe house within the hour. Damon felt tension he hadn't known he was carrying released from his shoulders. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is contingent on you providing detailed, verifiable information. If you waste our time or lie about anything material, the protection ends and you go from witness to defendant. Understood. Good. Then let's talk about Vince Leone's specific activities over the last 6 months. And Damon talked. He gave them dates and locations, described meetings and exchanges, outlined the network of contacts Vince had built. He explained the money flow, the communication protocols, the careful layers of deniability that insulated the organization from direct legal exposure. He told them about the heroin shipment that had come through the port 3 months ago, and how Vince had arranged the customs clearance. He described the protection racket that operated out of the meatpacking district, and how Vince collected payments disguised as consulting fees. He gave them the location of 3 safe houses, the names of 6 shell companies, and the account numbers for offshore funds that totaled somewhere north of $40 million. By the time the sun came up, Damon had systematically dismantled an empire he'd spent 15 years building, and with each piece of information, each documented betrayal of people who'd trusted him, he felt lighter. Because this wasn't betrayal. This was choosing something different. Choosing a daughter who would never have to wonder if her father was coming home. Choosing an ex-wife who maybe, possibly, might give him a second chance at being the man she'd hoped he could be. Choosing peace over power, even if that peace came wrapped in federal custody and witness protection. Reyes finally called a break around 7 in the morning. We've got enough to start making arrests. You'll be transferred to federal holding while we verify everything you've told us. How long will that take? 72 hours minimum, possibly longer depending on what we find. And Sloan and Elena? Already at the safe house. They're fine. Reyes hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I believe you're doing this for the right reasons. Most witnesses I deal with are trying to save themselves. You're trying to save your family. Is there a difference? Sometimes. She stood, gathered her notes. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start going through everything again in detail. They moved him to a holding cell, not the drunk tank or general population, but a private cell that had probably been used for witnesses or protective custody before. It had a cot, a sink, a toilet, and nothing else. Damon lay down on the cot, his body aching with exhaustion and residual adrenaline. His daughter was 6 hours old, his ex-wife was in federal protection, and he had just burned down everything he'd built in the hope of building something better from the ashes. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but all he could see was Elena's tiny face, her impossibly small fingers, her first breath that had come after that terrible, infinite pause. Worth it, he thought. Whatever comes next, she was worth it. And for the first time in 8 months, maybe for the first time in 15 years, he actually believed it. Damon didn't sleep. He lay on the cot staring at the ceiling tiles and counting the hours until he could see his daughter again, until he could verify that Sloan and Elena were truly safe and not just theoretically protected by people he'd spent 15 years learning not to trust. At 9:37, a guard appeared outside his cell. You've got a visitor, conference room 2. Damon followed him down a corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner and old anxiety, through 2 sets of locked doors, and into a small room with a table and chairs that looked identical to the interview room from hours earlier. Mara was waiting, her expression carefully controlled in the way that meant she was furious and trying not to show it. The guard stepped outside, left the door cracked. Mara waited until his footsteps faded before she spoke. "You cooperated." "I did." "Full cooperation. Names, locations, everything." "That was the deal." "The deal." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You handed the police 15 years of work in a single night. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved my daughter from growing up the way we did." Damon's voice was level, absolute. "I'd do it again." Mara stared at him, and he could see her working through the implications, the cascading consequences of his choice. "Tony and his crew got out clean. They're already 3 states away under new names." "Good." "Marcus, Rodriguez, Chen, and Dimitri are also cooperating. The U.S. attorney is so excited she's practically dancing." "Also good." "Damon." Mara leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Vince Leone is dead. They found him 2 hours ago in his apartment. Single gunshot to the head, professional execution." The words landed like a physical blow. Damon's hands tightened on the edge of the table. "Who?" "No idea. Scene was clean, no witnesses, no evidence. But the timing suggests someone decided to cut their losses before Vince could be arrested and questioned. Which means whoever hired him is still out there. And knows that you're cooperating with the police." Mara's expression was grim. "Damon, you just painted the biggest target imaginable on your back. If they killed Vince to keep him quiet, what do you think they'll do to you? That's why Sloan and Elena are in federal protection. And you think that's enough? Federal protection has failed before. Witness security has been compromised before." She pulled out her phone, showed him a news article. 3 witnesses killed in the last 18 months despite being in protective custody. And those were lower-profile cases than yours. Damon read the article, felt cold certainty settle into his bones. Mara was right. He'd made himself the most valuable target in the city, and federal protection was only as good as the people implementing it. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we need insurance. Real insurance, not government promises." Mara pocketed her phone. "I've spent the last 6 hours making calls, reaching out to people who owe us favors, who have no connection to Vince or whoever hired him." "Mara, let me finish. I've got 3 different security teams willing to provide backup protection for Sloan and Elena. Private contractors, completely off books, loyal to us, and not to whoever's cleaning up loose ends. If I go around federal protection, Reyes will consider it a breach of trust. If you don't, you might be trusting your family's lives to a system with documented holes." Mara's voice was fierce. "I'm not asking you to abandon the cooperation. I'm asking you to be smart enough to have a backup plan." Damon wanted to argue, wanted to believe that doing everything by the book would be enough. But Vince Leone was dead, executed before he could talk, and that suggested resources and reach that went beyond anything he'd anticipated. "Set it up, but quietly. I don't want Reyes knowing unless absolutely necessary." "Already done. Chen's coordinating. He's got good instincts and no conflicts of interest." Mara stood. "There's something else you should know." "Tell me." "Sloan asked to see you. The marshals said it wasn't possible during active cooperation, but she pushed back, hard." A ghost of a smile crossed Mara's face. "Apparently our ex-sister-in-law has gotten very good at demanding what she wants." "She always was. I just didn't listen well enough." "Well, she's listening now, and what she's hearing is that the father of her child is in federal custody while someone's executing witnesses. She's terrified and angry and trying very hard to keep it together for Elena." Guilt settled heavy in Damon's chest. "Can you get a message to her?" "What message?" "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm going to fix this. Tell her—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound hollow. "Tell her Elena is the best thing I've ever done, and I'm not going to let anything happen to either of them." "I'll tell her." Mara moved toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. I'm furious about how you did it, but the outcome? Our niece gets to grow up without this hanging over her head. That's worth more than any empire." She left before he could respond. The guard returned, escorted Damon back to his cell. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. At 2 in the afternoon, Reyes appeared with a tablet and a grim expression. We verified most of what you told us. Arrest warrants are being executed as we speak. Most? Some of your information is proving difficult to confirm. Shell companies that don't exist anymore. Contacts who've disappeared. Money that's been moved. She sat on the edge of the cot, the tablet balanced on her knee. We also found Vince Leone. My sister told me. Did she tell you that the ballistics match a weapon used in 2 other executions? Both witnesses who were cooperating in major organized crime cases. Damon's blood went cold. You're saying there's a professional cleaning up loose ends. I'm saying there's a pattern, and you just became part of that pattern. Reyes pulled up a file on the tablet, showed him crime scene photos from the other 2 murders, both clean, both professional, both witnesses who'd been in protective custody. The good news is that we know what we're dealing with. The bad news is that this person is very good at their job. What are you doing to protect Sloan and Elena? They're in a federal safe house with 24-hour marshal protection. No one knows the location except authorized personnel. They're as safe as we can make them. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. Reyes's voice was firm. Mr. Valenti, I understand your concern, but we have protocols for exactly this situation. Your family is protected. You need to focus on providing us with information that will help us identify whoever's behind this cleanup operation. And if the protocols fail, if someone inside your organization is compromised the way someone inside mine was, then we have backup protocols. And backups to the backups. She stood, her expression softening slightly. I've been doing this for 20 years. I protected witnesses from cartels, from terrorist organizations, from people with resources that make your organization look like amateur hour. Your family is safe. Damon wanted to believe her. But Vince Leone was dead, and that suggested the person behind this had reached into places that should have been secure. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of interviews and verification. Reyes and her team walked Damon through every detail of his statement, corroborating names and dates and financial transactions. The U.S. attorney appeared twice, asked pointed questions about specific operations, built out timelines that would hold up in court. Through it all, Damon couldn't shake the image of Vince's apartment, the professional execution, the message that sent. Someone was cleaning house, and he was the primary target. On the 3rd morning of his custody, Reyes appeared with news that made his stomach drop. We've got a problem. Someone tried to access the safe house location through our internal database. Tried? The attempt was blocked, but it came from inside the marshal's office. We're investigating, but in the meantime, we're moving your family to a secondary location. How compromised is the system? We don't know yet. Could be a single corrupt marshal, could be something bigger. Reyes's expression was tight. Either way, we're treating this as a serious breach. Sloan and Elena are being moved within the hour to a location that only 3 people will know. I'm one of them. I want to see them first. That's not... Detective, someone just tried to access my family's location from inside your organization. I'm not asking. I'm telling you that if you want my continued cooperation, I need to see with my own eyes that they're safe before you move them somewhere I can't verify. Reyes stared at him, weighing the demand against the reality of their situation. Finally, she nodded. 1 hour, supervised, and then they move. They transported him in an unmarked car, 2 marshals flanking him in the back seat, Reyes driving. The safe house was in a suburb 40 minutes north of the city, a nondescript ranch home on a quiet street that could have belonged to anyone. 2 marshals stood guard outside. Reyes cleared Damon through security, then led him inside to a living room that had been converted into something resembling a fortress. Reinforced windows, security cameras, communication equipment that looked military-grade. Sloan was in the kitchen feeding Elena from a bottle, her movements tired but competent. She looked up when Damon entered, and the expression on her face was complicated. Relief and anger and exhaustion all fighting for dominance. You look terrible, she said. You look beautiful. He meant it. Even exhausted and scared and 3 days postpartum, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Liar, but she almost smiled. Come meet your daughter properly. You only got about 5 minutes last time. Damon crossed to them, and Sloan shifted Elena so he could see her clearly. The baby had changed in 3 days, lost some of the newborn puffiness, her features becoming more defined. She was actively feeding, her tiny hands curled against the bottle, her eyes half closed in contentment. She's perfect. She's got colic and hasn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch, but sure, perfect works. Sloane's voice was dry, but there was warmth underneath. Mara's been here twice, brought supplies, baby clothes, told me about the security arrangements you made. You're angry about that. I'm angry about a lot of things. The private security is pretty far down the list. She adjusted Elena's position. What I'm really angry about is that we're in witness protection because you decided to burn down your empire without asking me first. I know. And that someone tried to hack into the safe house location, which suggests the people you're testifying against have resources we didn't anticipate. I know that too. And that our daughter is 3 days old and already has armed guards outside her door because her father made enemies of people who execute witnesses. Sloane, I'm not done. Her eyes were fierce. I'm also angry that you were right, that walking away wasn't enough, that they found me anyway and would have kept finding me because I'm leverage and our daughter is leverage, and the only way to stop that was to take away the thing they wanted to leverage. Damon sat down heavily in the chair across from her. I don't know how to apologize for any of this. Good, because I don't want apologies. I want solutions. She pulled the bottle away as Elena finished, lifted her to burp against her shoulder. Mara says there's a professional cleaning up witnesses, that Vince is dead and 2 others before him. That's what Detective Reyes says too. So what's the plan? Federal protection, new identities, relocation to somewhere far away from anyone who knows us. That's their plan. What's yours? Damon looked at his daughter, at her impossibly small body pressed against Sloane's shoulder, at the tiny fingers that curled and uncurled against her mother's back. My plan is to make sure whoever's behind this doesn't have a reason to keep coming after us. And how do you do that? By giving the police everything they need to arrest not just my organization, but the people who are paying Vince. By making myself worthless as a target because I've already given away all the valuable information. That's essentially the same plan as before. Not quite. He pulled out his phone, showed her a document he'd been working on for the last 2 days. This is a complete organizational chart. Every connection, every financial tie, every piece of leverage I ever had. I'm giving this to the U.S. Attorney this afternoon with one condition. What condition? That they use it to build cases against everyone connected to the attempt on the safe house. Not just the corrupt marshal, but whoever hired them, whoever's running the cleanup operation, all of it. He pocketed the phone. I'm not just cooperating, I'm weaponizing my cooperation, making it so expensive to come after us that it's not worth the effort. Sloane studied him, her hand moving in slow circles on Elena's back. And if that doesn't work, then we have Mara's backup security, Chen's team, and my willingness to disappear so completely that no one will ever find us. He met her eyes. I'm done being reactive, Sloane. I'm done waiting for the next threat. From here on out, we're on offense. We. She said it like she was testing the word. As in you and me? As in our family, you, me, Elena. Mara if she wants to be part of it. But yes, we. If you'll have me. I divorced you 8 months ago. I remember. I signed papers, made it very clear I was done with you and your world. I remember that too. And now you're asking me to trust you again? To believe that this time will be different? Damon stood, moved closer until he was kneeling beside her chair, eye level with both Sloane and their daughter. I'm asking you to let me prove it. Not with words or promises, but with actions. With every choice I make from here on out being about protecting you and Elena instead of protecting my empire. Pretty words, Damon. Then let me show you with ugly actions. With testimony that sends people to prison. With cooperation that burns every bridge I ever built. With a willingness to live under a different name in a different city, doing whatever it takes to keep you both safe. He touched Elena's tiny hand, felt her fingers curl reflexively around his thumb. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me earn my way back, one day at a time, for as long as it takes. Sloane was quiet for a long moment, her hand still moving on Elena's back. The baby had fallen asleep, her breathing soft and even against her mother's shoulder. Okay. Okay? Okay, you can try. But Damon, the first time you lie to me, the first time you make a choice that prioritizes your ego over our safety, the first time you slide back into old patterns, we're done. For real this time. No second chances, no dramatic gestures. Just done. Understood. I mean it. I'm not doing this again. I'm not spending years wondering if you're going to change or if I'm just kidding myself. I know. He stood, leaned down to press a kiss to Elena's head, then another to Sloane's temple. Thank you for giving me the chance. Detective Reyes appeared in the doorway. Time's up. We need to move them. Damon stepped back, let the marshals move into position around Sloane and Elena. They had a practiced efficiency that should have been reassuring, but just made him more aware of how dangerous their situation had become. Where are you taking them? I told you, Reyes said. Only 3 people will know. You're not one of them. Then how do I contact them? You don't. They contact you through secure channels when it's safe. Reyes gestured to the door. Come on. We need to get you back before your absence is noticed. The drive back to the holding facility was silent. Damon watched the suburbs give way to city, watched normal people going about their normal lives, and felt the weight of everything he'd given up settle into his bones. But Elena's face was etched into his memory. Sloane's cautious hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could build something better from the ashes of his old life. Back in his cell, Damon pulled out the document he'd shown Sloane and started adding details. Every connection he could remember, every financial tie, every piece of leverage or blackmail or carefully cultivated alliance. He turned his organization inside out on digital paper, creating a roadmap that would let the authorities dismantle everything he'd built. At 8 that evening, the U.S. attorney arrived with Detective Reyes and a team of lawyers. They spent 4 hours going through the document, asking questions, verifying details. By midnight, they had enough to request 63 arrest warrants and freeze 47 bank accounts. This is unprecedented, the U.S. attorney said, something like respect in her voice. Most cooperating witnesses give us pieces. You're giving us the whole machine. I want it gone, Damon said simply. All of it. Every piece that could come back to threaten my family. Some of these connections go pretty high up. Politicians, judges, business leaders. You understand what you're opening up? I understand that my daughter is 4 days old and already has people trying to kill her mother. So yes, I understand. And yes, I'm sure. The U.S. attorney exchanged glances with her team. We'll need you to testify. Grand jury first, then trials. Could take years. I'll testify. And you're willing to accept witness protection? New identity, new location, no contact with anyone from your former life? As long as my family is protected, I'll accept whatever terms you require. She nodded slowly. Okay, we'll start the paperwork. In the meantime, you stay in protective custody here. No visitors except your lawyer and our team. What about Sloane and Elena? They're safe. That's all you need to know. It wasn't enough, but it was all he was going to get. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Damon testified before a grand jury, walked them through financial crimes and violence, and 15 years of carefully cultivated corruption. Arrest warrants were executed. Bank accounts were frozen. His former organization collapsed like a house of cards, exactly as he'd intended. And through it all, he had no contact with Sloane or Elena. No way to verify they were safe except Reyes's assurances and Mara's occasional updates through carefully vetted channels. On day 12 of his custody, everything changed. Reyes appeared at his cell at 3 a.m, her expression grim. We've got a situation. Damon was on his feet immediately. What happened? Someone made another run at the safe house. Professional team, 6 operators, coordinated assault. His blood turned to ice. Sloane and Elena are fine. Chen's backup security team intercepted them before they reached the house. All 6 operators in custody, no casualties on our side. The relief was so intense it was almost painful. Damon sat back down on the cot before his legs gave out. Tell me everything. Chen had tracking on all vehicles approaching the neighborhood. When the operator's van entered the perimeter, his team moved to intercept. There was a brief firefight, 2 operators wounded, the rest surrendered when they realized they were outgunned. Who sent them? That's the interesting part. Reyes pulled out her tablet, showed him photos of the captured operators. These aren't local contractors. They're former military, highly trained, expensive, the kind of people you hire when money is no object. Damon studied the photos, looking for anything familiar. One face stood out, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and a scar across his left cheek. I know him, Viktor Petrov. He used to work for the Volkov organization out of Brighton Beach. Used to? They were our main rivals for the port access. We had an understanding. They stayed east, we stayed west. Nobody crossed territorial lines. So why would they send a team after your family? Because someone paid them to. Damon's mind was racing, connecting pieces he should have seen earlier. Vince was coordinating for someone with serious resources. What if it wasn't a local player? What if someone brought in the Volkov organization specifically because they were outside my network? Reyes was already typing. If that's true, we need to move fast. The Volkov organization has reach into federal systems. They could have been the ones who tried to hack the safe house location. Can you pressure Petrov? Make him give up who hired him? Already working on it. But Damon, if this is Volkov-level resources, witness protection might not be enough. Then what is? She looked at him for a long moment. Full immunity and a very aggressive prosecution. We take down not just your organization, but theirs too. Make it so expensive to keep coming after you that they cut their losses. How do we do that? You tell us everything you know about their operation. Every contact point, every financial tie, every piece of leverage you ever had on them. She paused. And you let us use you as bait. Bait. They want you dead because you're a threat. We make you a bigger threat. Publicly announce your cooperation, leak details about what you're giving us. Force them to make a move while we're ready for it. You want to paint a target on my back. I want to control where and when they shoot at that target. Reyes's expression was fierce. Right now, they're hunting in the dark, taking shots at your family because they don't know where you are. We change that. We tell them exactly where you are, and we make sure they come for you instead of Sloan and Elena. Damon's first instinct was to reject the plan. Using himself as bait meant risk, meant exposing himself to exactly the kind of professional execution that had killed Vince. But it also meant drawing fire away from his family, and that made it worth considering. What's the timeline? 48 hours. We interrogate Petrov, build out the Volkov connections, then we make a very public announcement that you're cooperating fully and providing testimony that will dismantle both organizations. And when they come for me, we'll be ready. Full tactical support, secured location, everything we need to end this permanently. Damon thought about Elena, about Sloan, about the life he'd promised to build for them. A life that couldn't start until this threat was eliminated completely. Do it. The next 48 hours were the most intensive of his life. Damon gave Reyes and her team everything he knew about the Volkov organization, their smuggling routes, their money laundering operations, their connections to corrupt officials. He identified weak points in their security, named people who might be turned against them, drew organizational charts that mirrored the ones he'd created for his own empire. And while he talked, federal agents executed a coordinated sweep. Arrest warrants for 17 members of the Volkov organization, seizure orders for their properties, freezing orders for their accounts. On the morning of day 14, Reyes held a press conference. She stood at a podium with the U.S. attorney and announced that Damon Valenti, former head of one of the city's largest criminal organizations, was cooperating fully with authorities. She detailed some of what he'd provided, enough to make it clear that his testimony would be devastating to both his former empire and their rivals. She ended with a challenge. Anyone who thinks they can silence Mr. Valenti before he testifies is welcome to try. We're ready for you. The response came within 6 hours. Damon was being held in a federal courthouse for a pre-trial hearing, the building secured by marshals and local police. At 2:30 in the afternoon, a delivery truck pulled up to the loading dock with a shipment of office supplies. The driver was Viktor Petrov's son. The shipment contained 4 armed men and enough explosives to level half the building, but Chen's intelligence network had identified the truck 3 blocks away. Marshals intercepted it at the loading dock, arrested all 5 occupants, and dismantled the explosives before they could be armed. 2 hours later, a sniper took position on a rooftop across from the courthouse. Federal agents spotted him before he could set up, apprehended him without shots fired. At 6 that evening, a third attempt came through a compromised marshal who tried to access Damon's holding cell. Reyes personally intercepted him, arrested him on the spot. 3 attempts in 4 hours. All coordinated, all professional, all foiled because the authorities had been ready. That night, Reyes appeared at Damon's temporary cell in the courthouse basement. She was smiling. "We got him." "Got who?" "Mikhail Volkov himself. Picked him up 2 hours ago trying to board a private jet to Moscow. He lawyered up immediately, but we've got enough evidence from Petrov and the other attempts to hold him without bail." Damon felt something in his chest unclench. "It's over?" "The immediate threat is over. We've dismantled both organizations, arrested the key players, frozen the assets. There might be some residual danger from loyalists, but nothing organized, nothing with the resources to mount another serious attempt." "And my family?" "Safe. Chen's team is standing down. Federal protection will continue for another month while we make sure there are no stragglers, but realistically, the threat is gone." Damon sat down on the cot, the reality of it finally sinking in. It was over. The empire he'd built, the enemies he'd made, the life that had nearly killed everyone he loved. All of it was over. "When can I see them?" "Tomorrow. We're moving you all to a transition facility where you'll start the witness protection process. New identities, relocation, the full package." Reyes sat beside him. "Damon, what you did, cooperating this completely, using yourself as bait, it's going to save lives. Not just your families. Every person who would have been hurt by these organizations continuing to operate. I didn't do it for them." "I know, but it matters anyway." She stood. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you start building that new life you promised your daughter." The transition facility was a converted hotel outside the city, nondescript and secure. Damon arrived in a marshal's van, escorted through a side entrance and up to a suite on the 3rd floor. Sloan was waiting with Elena. The baby was 2 weeks old now, her face fuller, her movements more purposeful. She was awake and alert, her dark eyes tracking movement with infant fascination. Sloan stood when Damon entered, Elena cradled against her shoulder. They looked at each other for a long moment, and he could see the questions in her eyes, the need for reassurance that this was really over. "It's done," he said quietly. "Both organizations dismantled, the threat eliminated. We're safe." She crossed the room in 3 steps, wrapped her free arm around him while Elena squirmed between them. He held them both, felt Sloane's tears soak into his shirt, felt his daughter's tiny body warm and alive against his chest. "I was so scared," Sloane whispered. "Every day, wondering if someone would find us, if the protection would hold, if you'd... I'm here. We're all here, and we're going to stay that way." They stood like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. When they finally separated, Sloane wiped her eyes and managed a shaky smile. "So, witness protection, new identities. Where are they sending us?" "We get to choose, actually. Anywhere in the country as long as it's at least 500 miles from here." "Any thoughts?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere Elena can grow up without ever knowing about any of this." He touched his daughter's tiny hand, felt her fingers curl around his thumb. "Somewhere we can be normal." "Normal sounds good." Sloane looked down at Elena. "What do you think, sweetheart? Ready to be normal?" Elena yawned, impossibly tiny and perfect. Over the next month, they built the framework of their new life. New names. Sloane chose Elizabeth for herself, keeping her middle name as a connection to who she'd been. Damon became David, which felt strange in his mouth but safe. Elena kept her first name but gained a new middle name and surname. They chose a small city in the Pacific Northwest, far from the ocean and the territories Damon had once controlled. They found a house with a yard and good schools nearby. Damon enrolled in online courses to finish a degree he'd abandoned 15 years ago. Sloane started applying for jobs in graphic design, her actual passion, before she'd met a handsome man with dangerous eyes and made the mistake of falling in love. Mara visited once before they relocated, met them at the transition facility with a bag full of baby clothes and a careful expression. "You really doing this? The whole suburban family thing?" "Trying to," Damon said. "And if it doesn't work? If you get bored? If the normal life doesn't fit?" Then I'll figure out how to make it fit. Because the alternative is going back to a life that nearly got my family killed. Mara looked at Elena, who was sleeping in Sloane's arms. She's beautiful. She is. Take care of them, both of them. That's the plan. And Damon? Mara's voice dropped. I'm proud of you, for choosing differently, for being brave enough to walk away. I thought you were angry. I was. I am. But I'm also proud. She hugged him, quick and fierce. Be happy, little brother. You've earned it. The move happened on a rainy Tuesday in June. They loaded their minimal possessions into a sedan provided by the marshals, strapped Elena into a car seat that still looked impossibly large for her tiny body, and drove away from everything they'd known. The house was perfect, small but well-maintained, with a maple tree in the front yard and a park 2 blocks away. Their new neighbors were friendly but not intrusive. No one asked uncomfortable questions about their past or why they'd chosen this particular city. Damon got a job at a local hardware store, which felt surreal after 15 years of running an empire. But there was something peaceful about helping customers find the right supplies, about honest work that didn't involve violence or fear. Sloane freelanced from home, taking on design projects while Elena napped. The money was tight compared to what they'd had before, but it was clean money, earned through effort instead of extortion. And slowly, carefully, they built something that looked like a real life. Elena's first smile came at 6 weeks old, directed at Damon while he was changing her diaper and making ridiculous faces. Her first laugh came at 10 weeks, prompted by Sloane blowing raspberries on her stomach. She started sleeping through the night at 3 months, which felt like a miracle. On their daughter's 6-month birthday, Damon made dinner while Sloane gave Elena a bath. He could hear them laughing in the other room, could hear Sloane narrating everything she was doing in that sing-song voice people used with babies. When they emerged, Elena clean and sleepy in fresh pajamas, Sloane damp and smiling, Damon had the table set with takeout from the Thai place down the street and candles that he'd bought on impulse. What's this? Sloane asked. Celebration. 6 months of Elena being the best thing we've ever done. 6 months of being a real family. We've been a family for longer than 6 months. We've been parents for 6 months. We've been a family, a real, functional, non-terrifying family, for about 3. Sloane settled Elena in her bouncer, then moved to the table. 3 months since you stopped flinching every time a car backfired. 3 months since I stopped checking every person who walked past our house. 3 months since we both started believing this might actually work. Is it working? She looked at him across the table, candlelight soft on her face. Yeah, I think it is. Even though I'm working retail and you're doing freelance work for half what you're worth? Even though, because Elena is happy and healthy and has no idea that her parents used to be different people with dangerous lives. Sloane reached across the table, took his hand. And because you kept your promise, you didn't lie, you didn't slide back into old patterns, you chose us. Every day. It was the easiest choice I ever made. Liar. It was probably the hardest. Okay, the hardest, but also the best. He squeezed her hand. Sloane, I know we're still technically divorced. I know we're taking this slow rebuilding trust, but I need you to know I'm in this. Completely. For as long as you'll have me. I know. She smiled. And when we're ready, when enough time has passed and we're sure this is real, ask me again. Properly this time. With a ring and a question and all the things I didn't get the first time because we were too caught up in the intensity to do it right. I can do that. Good, because I'm not saying yes until you do. They ate dinner while Elena played with a soft toy, making the nonsense sounds that were her current favorite form of communication. They talked about mundane things, weekend plans, Elena's upcoming pediatrician appointment, whether they should plant tomatoes in the backyard. It was ordinary, normal, exactly what Damon had promised Sloane when he'd burned down his empire. And it was perfect. Later that night, after Elena was asleep in her crib and Sloane was reading in bed, Damon stood at the window looking out at their quiet street. A year ago, he'd been running an organization that controlled half the city's criminal activity. 6 months ago, he'd been in federal custody, testifying against everyone he'd ever known. Now he was David Morrison, hardware store employee and father to a 6-month-old who'd just learned to roll over. His greatest stress was whether they could afford to replace the washing machine that had started making concerning noises. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he recognized. Detective Reyes, checking in the way she did every few months. "How's the family?" He typed back, "Happy, healthy, normal." "That's good to hear. The trials wrapped up last week. Everyone you testified against is going away for a long time. And Volkov, 40 years, no parole. He'll die in prison." Damon felt the last piece of his old life click into place and settle. It was truly over. Everyone who'd threatened his family was either in prison or scattered to the winds, no longer a threat. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for having the courage to do the right thing. Not many people in your position would have." He pocketed the phone and climbed into bed beside Sloane. She set down her book, shifted to curl against him. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." He kissed her forehead. "The trials are done. Volkov got 40 years. We're safe, completely, finally safe." "Good." She was quiet for a moment. "Damon, David, whoever you are now, I love you. I probably never stopped, even when I was angry and scared and trying to convince myself I was done with you." "I love you too. Both of you. More than I knew it was possible to love anything." From the nursery came a soft cry. Elena waking from her evening sleep and wanting attention. Sloane started to get up, but Damon stopped her. "I've got her. You rest." He patted down the hall to the nursery, lifted his daughter from her crib. She settled immediately against his chest, her crying subsiding into small hiccups. "Hey, Elena May," he murmured, rocking her gently. "You want to know a secret? A year ago, I didn't know you existed. 6 months ago, I held you for the first time and had no idea what I was doing. And now I can't imagine a single day without you." She made a small sound, her tiny hand fisting in his shirt. "I know you'll never remember any of this. The danger, the fear, the people who tried to hurt you and your mom, and that's good. That's exactly what I wanted." He moved to the rocking chair by the window, settled in with Elena against his shoulder. "You're going to grow up thinking your dad works at a hardware store and your mom does graphic design, and we're just a normal family in a normal town, and that's perfect. That's everything." Elena's breathing began to even out, sleep reclaiming her. But Damon kept rocking, kept holding her, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, and the trust implicit in how she slept against his chest. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, his family was safe. And somewhere between the life he'd left behind and the life he was building, Damon Valenti, David Morrison, found something he'd never expected to find. Peace. Real, earned, chosen peace. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exciting. It was just a man holding his daughter while his almost wife again slept down the hall, and tomorrow he'd go to work at a hardware store and help people find the right drill bits. But it was his. Clean and honest and built on choices that prioritized love over power, and that made it worth more than any empire he'd ever controlled.